Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm gonna call this official plan update committee meeting to order. It just past 1:30. We'll start the adoption of the agenda. Is there a member of committee going to move that? Thank you, Mayor West. Okay, any discussion? No, all in favor of the agenda as presented? Any opposed? That carries. Do any members of the committee have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, I see none. Thank you. So we go to the minutes of the previous meeting. Someone willing to move that? We just need a mover. Thank you, Councillor Silovitz. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to begin with delegations before we get into the scheduled business. So we have two members of the public who have fulfilled the requirements to delegate before this committee. The first. Yes, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. If I might, Mr. Chair, for the benefit of our delegate, especially the delegate, we do have one delegation who's appearing electronically today. Our online timer is not working today. So we're using our analog one here in the chamber. And for the benefit of the online delegate, I will give the 1 minute warning when we're verbally.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first delegation is from Mr. Harry Hurak from 66 Major Mackenzie Drive West. Welcome, Mr. Hurak. You've got up to 5 minutes to address the committee.
Hello, folks. I'm Harry Hurak, and to those, thank you, new members and council. Anything I said, you didn't cause it. The council process in 2017 seems to have been the one that actually stepped out of line with us, or we are out of line with. So by approving my headers, we have to have a talk, a serious talk. I have a problem, and I don't think our city is built for dealing with what they call problem resolutions. It deals with positions. So I'm tired of giving my position over and over. So I'm going to speak about my issue in a different manner today. You would be approving the work in progress of the official plan update committee. And by doing so, in there would be carving out my land as a road. Yeah, and staff reports don't often say that. I thought I heard something just now, and it reminds me so much of February 6, 2017, when a council sitting there approved a development plan, Laurier Homes, and in there, when it says issues, the main issues and concern identified at the meeting included Northwest linkage identified in the downtown design land use strategy made 2009, incompatibility with the proposed developments, etc. That line that also should have said, and the road required for that linkage that you're proposing will be Mr. Hurak's property. When members voted, I don't think anybody understood that. I stood up here and I spoke to it in the open session. In the back here, about 30 or 40 other residents in downtown. And I heard a grunt, a response somewhere from within this side of the aisle says, "You're just in the way." That was the comment I took out from, I know who the person is, it's not relevant, I mentioned it. The approach to your approving something, if somebody's in the way, you just approve it and leave that person out there. I've been here 36 years, and everybody know all of that stuff except in your councils. And some in your councils I also have had the privilege of meeting, and I think with Mrs. Thompson, perhaps Ms. Davison, probably indirectly through Marge Andre and the work you do over there. I was involved with her connecting the community a little before that. But back to my speaking. It seems to me that we had, when I moved in 1986, there was a 2 acres forest that separated the Cottage Lane from the downtown and Arnold Street. There was never any walk-through, drive-through, or anything through. It was just forest and deers and bears and rabbits. In 2014, that land was sold to a developer. 6 months or less later, there were wood chips. When I spoke to the city, nobody seemed to know about it. That's a separate issue. They came up with an approval to do 42 homes with a turnaround road from Arnold Street back to Arnold Street. And we were separated in separate communities. We were called Cottage Lane. Cottage Lane after the fact that the origin of ours was most people lived downtown and worked downtown and live here. And so in the weekend, we all had this children's parties and whatever we do. We were never part of lime trees, walkways along, sidewalks along the walkway and stuff like that. So I'm here to say to you today, something needs to be done other than leaving you to get a lawyer. Or as somebody who made a presentation to OP the other day, oh, Mr. Harry, we can wait. We don't have to buy your property. So my ask is, by approving the OP, you're actually authorizing the mandatory acquisition of my property for a road, which is a public purpose. As I understand the law says that you have to expropriate it. You don't push expropriate out to some point in time. I was so clear. We can wait, Mr. Harak. Yeah, wait. I got 20 years more to go, if at all. We wait to burden my children. I have a home with my home equity. You want the road, have it. Pay for it. I understand even in Russia they do, China they do. Why not in Richmond Hill? Timing, I'm not the custodian of time. You want my place, take it. Thank you. Looks like I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Harak, and we understand your concern regarding this local center and the proposed OP amendment. We will definitely be receiving your comments today as a part of this agenda. This is like a public hearing where we're going to hear comments from our staff and others. And there is other opportunities to discuss what's being draft proposed today between now and an expected adoption in the fall. So we will continue to dialogue with you there. And our next delegation is Martin Abramanian. I'm sorry, from 76 Major Mackenzie Drive West. Mr. Abramanian, you're online, are you? Oh, there you are. Very good. So you noted that the clerk's going to let you know when you've got 1 minute left. You've got 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes to address council.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Martin Abramanian, one of the residents, like Harry Harak, of a group of property owners who represent the properties on north side of Major Mac and east of Yonge, historically known as the Cottage Lane. This is the third time we've appeared in front of the council to voice our concerns regarding these issues of the OP update as they pertain to our community. These have been brought up and been officially filed many times, but we have yet to hear any answer or official response regarding to any of these issues. Number one, as Harry mentioned, the extension of Elizabeth Street through our laneway to Major Mackenzie Drive. In the original OP update, I first noticed in a state of shock, a figure which showed Elizabeth Street being extended through the back of my property also, all the way down to Major Mackenzie Drive. Upon our protest last year, we were told that by the city staff that it was a mistake, editorial mistake, and it will be corrected in the final revision. Current update as proposed by the staff, however, continues to show the extension. I understand that the current mayor, being the former councillor of our area, had made some promises to the residents of Arnold community for this extension for unknown reasons, possibly that they won't be affected by additional traffic. But it does not make any sense to continue to negatively impact our properties only to keep a certain voting group happy. You are now our elected mayor, and I think it's time for you to set aside your fixation of the Elizabeth Street extension and consider options which is mostly will benefit the town of Richmond Hill. The building of Laurier Homes is currently underway and does not need the extension of the road for their continued development. The extension is only going to limit the development potential of a very strategically located set of properties, which is my second point. Designation of village center. Although our neighborhood is geographically bound by the definition of the village center, it doesn't represent the village at all. It is completely isolated from the Heritage Center to the north by the cemetery and further by this new Laurier home development. It's an isolated pocket of 2 to 3 acres, hence separately known as the Cottage Lane for the last 100 years, and faces a regional corridor. And most importantly, we are the only property in the village center which meets the provincial and regional MTSA intensification requirements. We feel that considering this pocket of land within a minute walking distance to downtown as an independent, isolated area from village core will recognize its maximum development potential and will serve the downtown community and businesses more efficiently with greater economic outcome. To limit the development of these properties by imposing the Elizabeth Street extension, as well as some, say, heritage area level of intensification, may satisfy a certain commitment by the mayor to the people who don't actually live there, but it will not be good for the good of the town, especially the downtown core and its economic development. Imagine a development within minutes of walking distance to downtown, which will demand the downtown businesses to grow and meet their requirements. Maybe it's time for downtown Richmond Hill to offer more than just haircut and money exchange places for the residents. God knows we have many of those. I'm hoping that these issues will now be addressed by the council finally and formally in detail. Based on our past experience, I, for one, like others in our area, I'm tired. I'm tired of being bullied by the staff into accepting something which is not to the benefit of the town and nor mine. Let the staff join the residents, come up with the plan which will allow this strategically located property to serve the community to its best potential. Let's always remember what happens to people who likely bully their way through an argument, which is exactly how we feel. At some point, someone stronger will come to bully them into submission. Maybe that's why Richmond Hill and many other municipalities are now finding themselves being bullied by a higher provincial power to submit to their requirements. It happens all the time. Let's listen to the residents. Let's listen to the people who are part of this very strategically located community, and let's do something there which benefits the town of Richmond Hill and the residents of the downtown core to its maximum potential. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Abramian. And again, your comments will be entered into the record regarding the village local center, and we'll carry on with our meeting and go now to our scheduled business. The first item, 4.1, originally it included introductory remarks, but we're going to go straight to the status update on Batch 2 OPA, implications of provincial planning statement and introduction to the Batch 2 OPAs, and a presentation by Sybil von Kersel, our manager of policy, for her 10-minute presentation. Go ahead, Ms. von Kersel.
Good afternoon, committee and chair. I will just quickly go through the agenda for today. So there will be 6 presentations, including the one that I'm providing right now. As well, you'll hear from staff on 4 proposed official plan amendments, and then we'll wrap up with next steps. If we could go to the next 2 slides, please. The purpose of the meeting today It really is to provide an opportunity to present to the committee what we are drafting in terms of these official plan amendments prior to releasing them for public comment. Our release date is targeted for May 11th, but we just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of what to expect. And as you'll hear in my presentation, I'll provide you with a bit of an scope of the OPAs. But before I get started on that, I did want to speak about the status of the OP update process in general. So if we could skip to slide 5, please. I believe this morning you received a briefing note regarding provincial initiatives related to the More Homes Built Faster legislation. There's now a proposed bill called Bill 97, which is helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act 2023. And related to that is the proposed provincial planning statement. So you may recall in March when we had our meeting, I mentioned Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster legislation and related initiatives, and indicated that through that proposal, it does have an impact on our OP update work. And so this is a continuation of that. At that time, we were anticipating the provincial planning statement, and now that has been released for consultation. And I won't go into the details of that, but what I did want to mention is some of the proposed implementation of that planning statement. So it does replace the growth plan and provincial policy statement, except for lands within the Greenbelt Plan area. It will likely come into effect in the fall of 2023. And the standard for implementation is consistent with, similar to what we have right now with the provincial policy statement. And which is different from how the growth plan is implemented, which is a conform to standard. In terms of local implementation, unlike the growth plan, there isn't a specific date in which the implementation of that PPS would occur. It would occur through our natural official plan update process. And in terms of the growth forecast, for now, the 2051 growth forecast that's in the growth plan continues to apply, even with the accelerated housing requirements that the province has asked us to implement the housing targets. The other interesting thing with respect to implementation is it is noted that the region will continue to be our approval authority, at least till the end of this year. You may recall in March, it was unclear when that provision of the Planning Act was going to be proclaimed. But for now, we know that at least till the end of this year, they will continue to be our approval authority. And there's also provisions in the provincial planning statement, as well as in Bill 97 affecting the Planning Act related to employment lands. And there's an intention for there to be a time period in which official plans would be updated to meet the new policies related to employment lands in the provincial planning statement, but that time frame hasn't been provided. And so the reason I'm bringing this to your attention today is it does allow us to have a little bit more of an understanding of what our next steps are with respect to the official plan update overall. So if we could go to the next slide, please. This timeline you've seen before. What's different here is that we have some more clarity on what constitutes batch 2. So you're going to hear about batch 2 amendments. There are 4 of them related to the Yonge and 16th KDA, the Oak Ridges Local Center, the Village Local Center, and the Newkirk Local Center. Once those are completed, then we will move into batch 3, which will address employment areas, our housekeeping matters, as well as their MTSAs and corridors. And the reason that for that time frame is if it indeed the PPS is in effect in the fall of 2023, we'll then be able to ensure that those amendments are implementing the new provincial planning statement and move forward with the approvals of those amendments. And as is noted on the slide, if that is the case, we would have substantively updated our official plan to meet all in effect provincial policies as well as the York Region official plan. And so then we would move into the batch 4 amendments, which address 2 local centers, the East Beaver Creek Local Center and the Bathurst and Highway 7 Local Center, to complete our MTSA conformity work. And then there's some consideration in terms of whether or not we move forward with inclusionary zoning, enabling inclusionary zoning, and or enabling the community planning permit system. And those we will bring back to the committee for discussion as we move forward with our affordable housing strategy implementation, as well as our comprehensive zoning bylaw update work. So now if we could just move to the next slide, please. Before I get started, or before the team gets started on presenting the 4 OPAs, we thought it would be helpful to speak about our city's growth management approach. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. So a key driver to growth management is understanding how much growth is anticipated to occur in Richmond Hill over the long term. And to understand that, we start with population and job growth forecasts prepared by the province and the region. Using this forecast information, we translate people and jobs into space requirements in terms of housing units and gross floor area required to support jobs. And this information was shared with Council in June of 2022 when we brought forward Official Plan Amendment 18.3. So once we have an understanding of how much growth is anticipated, we then determine where best to accommodate that growth and how it should be serviced. And through the adoption of OPA 18.3, the City Vision and Structure Official Plan Amendment, we determined that the vast majority of growth will be accommodated in growth centers and corridors along Yonge Street and Highway 7, as well as in our business parks in the case of job growth. With the OPA 18.3 in effect, the city is now working to finalize its infrastructure master plans to ensure that these growth areas are or will be appropriately serviced. So we're now in the next step of our growth management approach, which is to provide more area-specific guidance. In June of 2022, we addressed our neighborhood areas with the adoption of OPA 18.4, and now we're focusing on these 4 centers. Once these area-specific OPAs are in effect, we can then update our zoning bylaws accordingly, which then leads us to the 4th stage of our growth management approach, which is issuing approvals for site-specific development applications and building permits, so that we do indeed accommodate the projected growth. If we go to the next slide, please. So as noted in our key directions report, we are focusing on planning our centers in accordance with our intensification hierarchy. On Wednesday, the Richmond Hill Center secondary plan is on the Committee of Whole agenda. And as you know, this is the most significant growth center in Richmond Hill. These other 4 centers we will be speaking about to you today are subordinate to the Richmond Hill Center, but each provide a unique element to the city structure and overall vitality. The 3 or 4 words attributed to these 4 centers attempt to sum up the vision for these centers, and the presentations that follow this one will elaborate on those visions and how we propose to realize them through our official plan policy. If we could go to the next slide, please. So before we get into the overview for each of the OPAs, I wanted to provide you with some general information to help orient you when you do see the draft amendments. Next slide, please. So the objective of the 4 OPAs is generally the same. The OPA is intended to implement the city planning vision on an area-specific basis. The OPA is designed to address the local context in terms of matters related to job creation, provision of housing, including affordable housing, and provision of public realm elements that are needed to serve growth and help ensure that these areas function as a complete community. The OPA specifically identifies public infrastructure that is needed in the area, including the provision of facilities to support active transportation in line with the city's mobility hierarchy identified in OPA 18.3. The OPA is also designed to assist with the evaluation of future development applications to ensure that new development implements the vision for this area. And on the right-hand side, you'll see what informed the development of those OPAs of the slide. Next slide, please. In terms of when you're reviewing the official plan amendments, you will note that they largely amend Chapter 4 of the official plan, which deals with land use policy. This is a departure from how the city had previously addressed area-specific planning, wherein we were creating new chapters in what we called Part 2 of the official plan. Based on the direction of the key directions report to streamline the official plan, we are now inserting area-specific policies in Chapter 4 to address matters that are not already addressed in other sections of the official plan. These Chapter 4 policies will include a vision statement for each of the centers, identify land use permissions, and provide built form direction that is not already provided in the plan. The policies may also build on policies provided in Chapter 3, city building, that are unique to the center and provide more detailed guidance on a specific matter. And you'll hear about these in the presentations that follow. Next slide, please. So in addition to the main body of the OPA, there are some technical changes. These address Chapter 5, the secondary plans. And this is, technical changes in terms of no longer identifying that these areas would be separate chapters in the official plan in Part 2 as secondary plans, and therefore Schedule A10 would also be modified accordingly. And there are some changes to Schedule A2, which is our land use schedule, to update the land use areas so that they are the complete boundary of the designated local center or key development area. Next slide, please. One other universal change you'll see in the official plan amendments is related to protected major transit station areas, or PMTSAs. As noted on the slide, MTSA is a defined term in the growth plan. These are defined as areas within 500 to 800 meter radius of high order transit terminals or stations. And the growth plan requires them to be planned in a manner that is transit supportive. And this will still continue under the planning statement if that comes into effect. The term protected comes from the Planning Act. Where areas are deemed to be protected MTSAs, the Planning Act authorizes municipalities to adopt policies that enable the use of inclusionary zoning and also shelters certain planning policies from being appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal, where these PMTSAs are established by an upper tier municipality. In November of 2022, the province approved the York Region Official Plan, and through that approval, 17 PMTSAs were approved in the city of Richmond Hill. Through the 4 OPAs we will be speaking about today, we intend to bring forward OP policies and mapping updates to address all or part of 6 of those PMTSAs. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide. These 6 PMTSAs overlap with lands that are located in the Yonge and Carville 16th Avenue KDA, the Village Local Center, and the Newkirk Local Center. So we intend to identify the boundaries of these PMTSAs they're assigned at minimum density targets in Schedule A3, settlement area of the OP. The PMTSA policies that are prescribed in the Planning Act, such as permitted uses, minimum and maximum density, and height, will be provided in Chapter 4 of the official plan through the adoption of these OPAs. The basis section of the OPAs will also include a statement regarding the estimated growth that would be accommodated within each of the centers over the long term. And that brings me to the end of my presentation with the recommendation that this presentation be received and all comments be referred back to staff.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Van Kersel, for that. So the way we're going to proceed is after each presentation, I'm going to bring it back to the committee. I'll be looking for a motion to receive the presentation, but now is your opportunity to ask questions, specifically on this presentation, being a general overview and explanation of the process. So members of the committee, okay, Councilor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Chair. Through Ms. Chair, to our staff, I do have questions on the page 9. I remember there's page 9 regarding to the Bernard KDA. And on the slide at the bottom, notes say the Bernard KDA plan is out of the entire solution. So I was just wondering, is there any specific reasons or is it a done deal? We never review anymore, just finished.
Oh, well, that secondary plan was recently approved by the Ontario Land Tribunal. So that one's in effect, and we wouldn't be reviewing that until perhaps the next official plan update review.
So what's going to be the next official update review?
Like within the next 5 to 10 years.
Okay, so that Bernard KDA, I'll say is completed. period, we don't have any opportunity to go back to see it, right? It's done deal.
Well, it just recently came into effect. I think we would want to see how it's progressing before we were to reconsider any of the policy directions in that plan.
Okay, still regarding to that one, do we receive any new applicants regarding to the development in that piece of land? Any one of the builders or any one of the owners reached us to apply for it?
I am aware that there are a few applications in process in that area.
Okay. Also, my second question regarding to the last one, is protected MTSA. So why this PMTSA is very special? It's dedicated for one slide compared with other official development projects.
So the slide 14, it was just intended to make the committee aware. There's there's the growth plan that speaks to major transit station areas, and there's the planning act that speaks to protected major transit station areas. So the region has done their official plan update and identified in accordance with the growth plan what are major transit station areas, and also identified them as protected in accordance with the Planning Act. And so when we do our official plan updates and we speak to these protected MTSAs, it gives us the opportunity to, if we so desire, bring forward inclusionary zoning related to those areas. And it also shields us from appeals on certain matters in accordance with the Planning Act. So that's the significance of it being a protected MTCA, is that we're ensuring that certain permissions and density and height limits are in effect and not subject to appeal under that umbrella.
I just see that one, we have the lowest dentist requirement. Do we have any highest dentist requirement in that one?
So you will see in the official plan amendment, we will have, and the team will speak to this in their presentations, that we have maximum FSIs, which is a way of establishing maximum people and jobs per hectare through built form. And you'll hear about that in their presentations.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Mayor West.
Thank you. Okay, a couple of just random thoughts here. I noticed that on slide 6, I think it is. So we're talking about the East Beaver Creek and Highway 7 and Bathurst Highway 7 areas is going to be in batch 4, and it's going to be in 2024 or later. I realize that we actually have on the agenda soon, I think it's next week, a fairly major application for the Highway 7 and Leslie area. Is there any concern with having the official plan batch that includes that area be off that to that length of time, or should we be thinking about that?
So we've been prioritizing the OP update based on, meeting these the requirements under the Planning Act to ensure that we're conforming with provincial and regional policies. I do realize there is that application, and I think that, there'll be a separate staff report in relation to that application. So I don't want to sort of speak out of turn here. But yes, we are mindful that there is development interest, and our desire is to work with the proponents as much as we can through this process.
Okay. Mr. Kwan?
Just to build on what the manager has said, obviously we're going to continue to receive site-specific development applications throughout the OP review process and, forever. So unfortunately, we can't stop the clock as far as our policy regime is concerned. And certainly now under the new regulations, we have a specific obligation to process development applications within a very timely manner. So notwithstanding our ability to try to harmonize the city's vision with these site-specific applications. We do have these new regulations on the timing of processing, but we will certainly continue to work with all applicants and try to, as I say, harmonize those visions and maybe persuade them to delay a potential appeal if at all possible. But I certainly wouldn't put any money on that per se, but we will continue to dialogue. And the other thing I would say here, we've been aware of this applicant's intentions to proceed with a higher density proposal for quite some time, but to hold up one over another was probably not in our best interest.
Okay. No, I get that. I mean, it's a matter of, it's everything all the time. We've got to, there's a whole bunch of priorities and we can't do all of them all at once. So, okay, that's fine. Are we going to, maybe we'll talk about this later in the presentations, but as we move forward then with these center specific amendments, what is the timeline and or opportunity for further final public consultations? I know we've done a lot already, but what's the schedule for what's coming up for the public as we move forward before we approve this?
Yeah, so I was going to bring that up at the tail end, but I'll give you the Coles notes, if you will. Our intention is to make the OPAs public as of May 11th on our city's website. We will be having an open house on June 7th, and we will be having a council public meeting on June 20th. And we don't intend on bringing forward the OPAs for final adoption until the fall, which means that there is a good 4 months of opportunity for ongoing consultation, receiving submissions, and looking at how we can improve the OPAs.
Okay, that's exactly what I want to hear. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm a little confused as well, given the newness of this about this PMTSA thing. I think I'm probably reflecting some of what Councillor Tree was saying. So once the MTSA's plan in that area is in our official plan, then it's protected, or is it protected now?
So the region has established the broader outline or boundary of the PMTSAs, and they've established a minimum density.
Okay.
When we bring forward the official plan amendment, it will be implementing the region's direction. And like I said before, certain matters will not be subject to appeal and in accordance with the Planning Act. So there are portions of that amendment that would be subject to the appeal. And then there are other portions in terms of permitted land uses, height and density that would not be subject to appeal. So it's protected in terms of bringing forward this amendment, and then its ongoing implementation.
Okay, so once this is, well, I mean, as of now, I guess, if somebody put in an application within the boundaries of a PMTSA, then that area or the height and density in that area would not be subject to appeal by. Okay, so that's the first question, subject to appeal. Is that correct?
So what our amendment in that particular matter would not be subject to appeal. And if someone came in with a private application, council would have the ability to not make a decision on that application as it relates to height and density and or refuse it. And neither of those would be subject to appeal.
Okay, now subject to appeal by whom?
The applicant or a third party.
Anybody?
Yeah. Okay,
that's interesting. All right. I mean, and that's under the Planning Act. So we have no power to change that even if we wanted to, because it's you mentioned this is not part of our OP. This is a part of the Planning Act.
So I should say in terms of a private application, if council decided that they supported that change, then the council's decision to support it, that may be subject to appeal because you're changing the approved maximums.
Okay. All right. Final question then. So how does the interface with this new PMTSA potentially interface with an area like the Young 16th KDA or the Bernard KDA or any of the other KDAs for that matter? So if like the PMTSA, for example, at Young and 16th will go into the Young and 16th KDA area, and I presume that it takes precedent over the KDA.
So when the staff present to you the OPAs, what we are saying is that the amendment will implement the PMTSA direction that comes from the region's official plan and the growth plan. Now, some of the PMTSA boundaries are going to be larger than or straddle the designated areas. And so that's where, if looking at slide 6, there's a subsequent amendment called MTSAs and corridors, which will kind of fill in the gaps in terms of these centers. So what we've done is, in many cases, the area that is part of these designated centers are smaller than the PMTSA. So what we're doing is taking the provincial radius of 500 to 800 meters. The region has brought it down to a smaller area with perhaps higher minimum density targets to kind of achieve the same goal. And we've done a similar exercise where we've really concentrated it within the local center or KDA to accommodate that ultimate goal of transit supportive development. And then that next amendment regarding MTSAs and corridors, like I said, will fill in any of the gaps that aren't addressed by these 4 centers, as well as the Richmond Hill Center OPA.
Okay, but where the two, so within a PMTSA and a secondary plan area, a KDA plan area, there's going to be some land that overlap.
Yes.
Where the land overlaps, the PMTSA is going to have to take precedence, I presume. Like, you can't have the KDA plan and the PMTSA plan.
Yeah, so they're not separate plans. We're implementing the PMTSA through that KDA.
But they have to be, so the common area between those two designations have to be consistent. Like, okay, if a particular piece of property is right on the corner of 2 streets, so on the one hand, it's within the KDA area, and on the other hand, it's within the PMTSA area. The permissions for that particular piece of property would be ruled by the PMTSA, not the KDA plan.
Okay, let me make one distinction. A PMTSA is not a designation. So the PMTSA has a boundary, and we monitor to see that we're achieving the minimum densities that are provided within that boundary.
Right.
So that was one thing that was very clear in the region's official plan, and that's something that we're consistently doing here.
Okay.
But within a PMTSA, you may have several different land use designations.
Got it.
Which all together work towards.
Okay, they're slightly different instruments then. Okay, I get it. All right, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, thank you. And I'm pretty sure I heard you say you want to receive the comments. All comments by that.
I thought it, but I don't know whether Councillor Tree thought it at the same time.
Oh, Councillor Tree had said that. Okay, very good. Well, so that motion's on the floor then. And the next speaker is Councillor Thompson. I've got then Councillor Silovitz and Councillor Chan. I see you there. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Through you, the chair. Thank you for the presentation. Mayor West had actually asked a number of questions that was going along the same thing I was thinking, but I have to admit, I'm still a little bit confused. So the PMTSA, this will be determined via the region. So we haven't got those determinations just yet. Is that correct?
No, they are now identified in the region's official plan, the boundaries and their minimum density targets and policy direction in terms of how we should be implementing the PMTSA.
Okay, so I guess my question now will be with the boundaries. So
yes,
when we talk about the radius of 500 to 800, so it's possible that a piece of property could be within that radius, but they're not necessarily within the boundary.
that's correct. So what's happened is at the provincial level, it was a very kind of theoretical boundary. The regional level, it's now delineated, and that's the direction both of the Planning Act and the Growth Plan, that the region delineate those boundaries. And then our direction for us is to now designate lands accordingly in ROP. So, and then like I said before, there could be multiple designations that apply to that within that boundary, so long as collectively they are ensuring that we're going to, over the long term, at least achieve the minimum density target that's assigned to that area. So what you see on slide 15, what the example there are 3 PMTSA boundaries. The Young and 16th KDA designation is within those 3 PMTSAs in a portion of those PMTSAs. And with a subsequent amendment that comes forward in 2024, we'll fill in the gaps in terms of where the current KDA boundary ends and the continuation of the PMTSAs occur. So what you see on that schedule, slide 15, is showing you that we're going to put these PMTSA boundaries in this schedule called settlement, which is really what we consider to be our monitoring schedule. So it's where we monitor, are we meeting our intensification targets? It's where we'll monitor, are we meeting our density targets for PMTSAs? And in the future, we'll also have boundaries for employment areas, and it'll be what we monitor in terms of meeting minimum density targets for employment areas as well. So this schedule is just really all about what we're monitoring in terms of density and intensification targets.
Thank you. Through the chair. So to use an example, and maybe this example isn't part of this, and I was looking at the Newkirk area, and you've listed it in such a way that, if you go to the west, it's a certain designation, going to the north, another one, and to the south, another one. How flexible are those boundaries? Is that carved in stone now from the region, or is this something that is still flexible? So
the PMTSA boundary is part of the region's official plan, and if we wanted to change it, we'd have to amend the region's plan. Again, the boundaries are intended to identify a certain amount of area where there should be densities that support transit supportive development. But it's the land use designations that we do through this process that will determine how you allocate the growth to overall accommodate that minimum density target. So that's where we have flexibility. Not every piece of land has to have the same level of density, so long as collectively we're achieving that minimum requirement. So some parts of a KDA or some parts of a local center may be more dense than other parts. And it's really where, in our key directions report, we spoke a lot about being context sensitive. And that's what we're after here is, yes, we want to meet those transit supportive densities, but in a context sensitive way, and which is why you'll hear from Andrew, the 3 character areas is appropriate for Newkirk.
Thank you. And through the chair, so then potentially the land use, provided they happen to be within the radius that we're talking about, that could determine what we're, whether it is or is not part of that PM or MTSA or PMTSA.
Well, like I said, the PMTSA boundary is a fixed boundary for the purposes of monitoring that we're meeting density objectives. The land use is where you determine what are the permitted uses, what are the permitted heights, what are the permitted densities, what is the public realm going to be, all to support that transit supportive complete community objective.
Okay, I think I probably didn't ask this appropriately. I guess I'm looking at the potential for the land use. So perhaps right at the moment, the land use isn't designated in a certain manner that would make it part of the MTSA simply because of how it's currently designated, but it might be within the radius that would normally be appropriate with an MTSA. So if there was an application to change that land use, then now could that potentially be part of the boundary area?
I mean, we can make a land use change irrespective of whether or not it's in a PMTSA. Like the two are two separate things like that. So the only difference would be is if the lands are outside of the PMTSA, then we're not afforded those opportunities in terms of implementing inclusionary zoning or having protection against appeals. That's the only difference.
Okay. I'm still a little bit confused, but I think maybe it's something I should probably take offline. So I do appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor, and Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you very much for your presentation and to all our staff who've worked so hard on these. My questions through the chair to you are very similar to Councillor Thompson's. Is it possible to put slide 15 back up on the screen? 15. Thank you. So when I look at this, the area described between, through you, Mr. Chair, Westwood Lane, and I believe that's the top one is Harding, that whole swath of land is basically a massive PMTSA. Would that be looking at it fairly?
Massive is relative. So that is the reason a portion of the Young and 16th KDA does overlap with the Weldrick BRT station area. And so in order to ensure that the whole of the KDA policies are protected under the Planning Act, we are bringing forward this MTSA outline with the minimum density target. It'll be through the subsequent OPA that deals with MTSAs and corridors where we would start to provide the actual implementing policies that relate to that area. Similarly with the Bantry-Scott PMTSA, because a portion of the Young and 16th KDA also falls into that PMTSA. It's just being added into this schedule, but there's really we don't necessarily fully deal with those two flanking MTSAs through this process. It'll be through the subsequent one. The real focus of the Young and 16th KDA OPA will be, with respect to that particular area, largely within this 16th Carville BRT station MTSA that's been delineated by the region.
And through you, Mr. Chair, these boundary lines that we see outlined here, blue and red, they're our boundary lines. Like they're part of our official plan, not the regions.
No, this is exactly from the regions. We're showing it because if we're going to be monitoring development in here to see that it's meeting those over time, those minimum density targets. Really, it's all about monitoring, and the direction for us is to plan for how we accommodate that growth within these areas based on our land use designations. So it's very possible that some of these lands stay neighborhood, some of them are regional mixed use corridor, some of them are KDA. We have that flexibility to determine the land uses and the permissions that happen within them. And as long as we're planning for transit supportive development.
Thank you very much. And my last question is this through the chair. The 500 to 800 meter circle, again, similar to Councillor Thompson's questions, what trumps, bad word, but whatever, what trumps the other? Like, is it the 500 to 800 boundary, or is it this?
Yeah, so it's almost like the stacking cups.
Yes.
So at the the provincial level, the 500, 800, they approved York Region's boundaries. So they've said, okay, we support the smaller boundary with your higher level of minimum density. Then we come in with our land use designations and permissions, and that gets approved. And so all together, we've implemented the provincial and regional direction in a way that is context sensitive for Richmond Hill. And so the Richmond Hill policy ends up being the one that we're all implementing together to achieve the goals of the region and the province as well.
So
And don't forget, the region will approve
Yes.
our OPA. So they're saying, you've done a good job of implementing our directions.
Thank you. So hypothetically, through you, Mr. Chair, when I look at what's on the screen and our designations here, if hypothetically, there is a piece of land that is just outside of these boundaries, the developer would have to put in a proposal to amend this amended OPA.
Again, oops.
I do it all the time.
To amend it to do what, I guess is the question.
To increase its density or its height. But I know we're not really looking at heights anymore. We're looking at the densities and the FSIs and the 45-degree angular plane. So just hypothetically, if somebody was just outside, because I have that in the 16th Carville area, there is a couple of properties that were just outside that the radius. Now, when I look at this and they're all joined together, what concerns me is that, we could have 24 stories or 30 stories or 36 stories all the way from, really it starts at the Richmond Hill Centre, starts at 7, all the way up to Harding.
Yep. So again,
Not to put you on the spot.
Again, and it'll probably be helpful once we move into the actual OPAs. But the MTSA delineations are not a land use designation. It is intended to help to move municipalities towards land use planning that's much more transit supportive. So inside or outside, through this process, we may have people make submissions to us to say, oh, we want to be in the KDA designation. We want to be in the regional mixed use corridor designation, and we can take those things into consideration. Once we've adopted the OPAs, though, we've established what are those land use designations. In the future, if somebody wants to come in and seek a change, it's the same process. The only difference is, I don't know why from a private sector, you would be asking to be in or outside of the PMTSA. It's like I said, it's a monitoring boundary. But if that was to change, then we'd have to go through, I guess, depending on whether or not the regional official plan is now deemed ours, we could modify boundaries through that process, or it's through the region's process. But yeah, I don't know how much, these are not land use designations. So
Okay.
Just maybe try and, divorce those two ideas.
Yeah.
It'll make this a lot easier.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Kwanda, do you have something to add through you, Mr. Chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I might let Ms. Flores, the director, jump in here, but just to maybe restate what the manager has said, there's various layers of planning regulations that the official plan must implement. Ultimately, it's a decision of council to establish land use designations in our official plan. The framework for establishing those designations will include achieving the provincial targets of jobs and population within the boundaries of an PMTSA or an MTSA. But ultimately, the land use designations in or outside of those boundaries will be the decision of this council ultimately. So the discussion about the MTSAs and PMTSAs is really about the provincial objectives for densities and the form of development in these key areas. But it ultimately doesn't tie our hands as the city to designate other areas beyond those boundaries for something other than whatever our vision may be, and it may or may not take care of the theory or the hypothesis that you've put forward, Councillor Silvitz.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Does the director wish to add anything through you, Mr. Chair?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kwan pretty much covered it, but maybe the one thing I will point out to council, just to help them visualize, each of these PMTSAs are tied directly to a transit station. So if you look at the slide before you, there are 3 PMTSAs and always linked to that particular station. And the reason that's done is because the province is directing us to ensure that there is enough density and redevelopment to support usage of those transit areas. So that's the way I tend to think of it, to separate it from the types of land use plans that we do at a more finer grain level. So we have still control over what land uses go on in those areas and how we want to transition as well.
Thank you. So in other words, if you look at it like a multi-level cake, then we still have the ability and the right to dictate what icing goes, what color icing goes in this particular layer. Would that be, it's most simplified, right? Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Silvitz. Regional Local Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the staff presentation and the great attempt to help us, to gain a better understanding. And thank you to my colleague's question. Before I ask any question, actually, I'd like to make a comment. It's almost like I, for one, I think I master planning 101. Now, the province have come in with successive new legislation. And I honestly think I need to upgrade to learn more about planning 201 and continue with planning 301. Perhaps that's the intention of the province. So that's fine. Reference been made to many layers. So we really like unpeeling the onion, one layer over one layer. Some are overlap, some are not. And that leads to my question for you, Mr. Chair. Number one, it jumps at me, even the first couple of slides and report on that, is that this new Bill 97 is basically kind of revamp the whole PPS. And interesting is except the greenfield. Is that absolutely correct, through Mr. Chair, to our presenter, the manager, or anyone in planning?
Through you, Chair, the implementation document that was supplementary to the provincial planning statement indicated that there was going to be a technical amendment to the Greenbelt Plan to ensure that provincial planning policies with respect to the current PPS and growth plan were still applying within the Greenbelt lands. So it's our interpretation then that notwithstanding that this is a provincial planning statement that would apply across Ontario, that within the Greenbelt Plan, there was going to be a continuation of what is currently the growth plan and PPS as it relates to lands within the Greenbelt. So until we actually see what the amendment to the Greenbelt is, it's not 100% clear, but that's our understanding, is that the Greenbelt Plan, the intention is to kind of keep the policy framework that is in existence today to continue through, even should the growth plan and PPS be repealed.
Okay, thank you. Because this is one major takeaway or observation I make, distinguishing the greenfield in terms of future changes or modification, if that might be the case. Number two is that talking about, and various colleagues' question touches on it, is that the protected TMSA or MTSA is actually in the regional, the boundaries are set by the regional official plan. And then it's also a timing factor, if I interpret correctly, is that region would still be the body of reviewing or approving only until sometime in early 2024. So through Mr. Chair, how we understand how that timing restriction insofar as the regional role in planning may or may not have an impact what the city of Richmond is talking about.
So through you, Chair, it's our understanding based on that implementation document that the region will, at the very least, continue to be our approval authority till the end of this year. The implementation document says at the earliest, it would be winter 2024 when the regional planning authority would be no longer in effect. So our intention is to bring forward these 4 OPAs in the fall of 2023, which would mean that the region would be the planning authority for at least these 4 OPAs, and we'll see what happens for the subsequent official plan amendments.
Thank you. The reason I bring that up is that it also seems to be of the provincial thinkers or planners are actually, in this case, seem to be now we are looking at an extended timeline for the regional role in planning in terms of approval. So that's the point I want to bring up. It's something worth considering for our council, particularly among 3 of us, Mayor, myself, and the chair who on regional council, but also my other colleagues. Now, the other third question I have is that I'm glad the speaker before me drew attention to that boundary. Now, I'm all in support of transit-oriented communities, depending on how you develop it. So none of the things we are talking about today seem to be have anything that touches on the provincially sanctioned TOC at the high-tech station. Is that correct for you, Mr. Chair?
Yes, so the Richmond Hill Center secondary plan, as I mentioned before, will be coming to committee of the whole on Wednesday, and that's when you'll be hearing more about the TOC and how that connects with the secondary planning for that area.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps I'm sure I will have more questions later on, but I just want to close by saying, number one, I'm also happy to hear that we have at least 4 months, if not more, the time not only for council to digest, but also having the public to be consulted through whether open house or through other sessions, which is a good thing. The other thing building on this is that within this time frame between now and I heard that our manager or presenter talking about may not bring the whole thing back to council for approval until the fall of this year. So if there's any opportunity to have a session, I think you should call it education session for council. And I think that would be something I would like to be considered. And I also would serve my other questions, which I may already brought up, is I'm thinking about the area in terms of the East Pivot Creek, as well as Bathurst and Highway 7, because, well, one is already have approved it, a planning application. The other one is one that is actually coming to us, I think on May 16th for council public meeting. So, so those things are certainly things that, regardless of province might have big plans for us, at Richmond Hill, we need to consider. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me and make those comments and ask questions. And thank you very much, staff. I'm sure that they have been doing their planning 401 very well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chan. Councillor Davidson, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one question. I'm so sorry, you lost me on the greenfield thing. Is a greenfield mean it is going to be developable, even though it was part of the moraine or it was part of the green belt? It is now got a new designation. It's greenfield, not green belt. Like, well, I don't understand what that means.
Through you, Chair, maybe it was my understanding from Councillor Chan's question was he was referring to the Greenbelt plan. So as opposed to greenfield is a different term, but I believe he was speaking about the Greenbelt plan. So
what does greenfield Through you, Mr. Chair, what does green field mean in
okay.
terms of development?
So in our current official plan, we have built boundary areas, and then we have what we call greenfield areas. So those are areas within our settlement that are, for all intents and purposes, vacant lands. So the greenfield is where you have, fresh development, vacant land available for fresh development, as opposed to a situation where you're doing intensification and redevelopment. But the green fields are within our settlement area, not outside of the settlement area, whereas the Greenbelt plan deals with lands that are outside of our settlement area. So
Thank
like
you. Okay.
lands that are designated Oak Ridge's countryside, or Oak Ridge's natural core, or natural linkage, thank you. Those are our Greenbelt lands, or our Oak Ridge's moraine lands. Those are outside of our settlement area.
So on the map that we were looking at on number 10, I think it was, the area of Young and Bloomington is considered developable. There's no question about it. We're going to mow it all down. We're going to allow lots of housing there because that is a greenfield area, meaning it's virgin land ready to be developed. It's not a question of any protections there. Like the word green just means there's nothing on it now. It doesn't mean preservation.
To be fair, within our settlement area, we also have lands that we call that are part of our Greenland system. So those are our natural corridors. So they like if we had our city structure map up, you would see that there are lands that have floodplain lands. They have woodlots, other natural heritage features. So those lands continue to be protected through the policies of our official plan. So not everything that's pink on slide 15 is developed or intended for development, but those are lands that are in our settlement area. But then on overlaying those pink lands are our Greenland system, which are protected lands as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So I think that exhausted the council speakers on this item. I'd like everyone to just be mindful that we were scheduled for a council public meeting tonight. We have a protected date of May 9th, 1 week from today, if we need to go over time. But we're hoping to wrap things up without putting any pressure on anyone. You're obviously can speak for as long as you want, but we want to move through this and wrap things up by 4:30 or 5, so we can have time to break before our next meeting. So I thank you, Ms. Von Kersel, for that, and we move forward. Well, I'm going to call a vote on Councillor Tree's motion to receive all those comments and refer the comments back to staff. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, we move to scheduled business 4.1.2, and this is the Oak Ridges Local Center and a presentation by Megan Cobold, our senior planner of policy. Yeah. Ms. Cobold.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, members of committee. I will now present an overview of OPA 18.8, which is regarding the Oak Ridges Local Center. So back at the March 2nd official plan update committee meeting, we shared information regarding public feedback on this OPA. And with respect to the Oak Ridges Local Center, feedback from the public indicated that there's support for the vision statement. At the time, it was a community with a modern town feel located on the Oak Ridges Moraine that is green, natural, clean, and safe. And people asked for more clarity in terms of what is meant by modern town, and that the expectation for this area is to provide an improved Main Street, especially along Yonge Street. Respondents also strongly noted that a distinguishing feature of this area is the presence of the Oak Ridges Moraine and the natural features and functions that are nearby to the center. The comments also indicated that the natural environment should take priority over other social and economic considerations when planning for this area. In terms of the built form, there was support for new development to include low and modest mid-rise development, to provide a broad range of housing types within the larger community, and also to provide for businesses located at the base of these buildings. And there was also support for expanding our parkland and providing active transportation routes within and outside of the center. So on to some of the details of the proposed OPA. Just to start, the proposed OPA includes a vision that's been updated based on the feedback mentioned on the previous slide. The vision is as follows. The Oak Ridge's local center is envisioned to be an active community with a modern town feel located on the Oak Ridge's moraine that is green, connected to nature, clean and safe with a walkable and sustainable main street. So we're going to be keeping this vision in mind for the policy updates that are proposed. The OPA also has some proposed updates to the land use permissions. Most of the permitted uses are the same as what is currently permitted, with the addition of high-density residential. And this is not to be confused with high-rise. High-density residential simply means a multi-unit apartment building. And for this center, we're proposing low and mid-rise buildings, not high-rise buildings. The main land uses listed are a continuation of what's currently permitted. And this includes medium density residential, such as townhouses, office, commercial, retail, automotive service, commercial, community uses, parks and urban open space, and also live work units. And in terms of job creation, there's a proposed long-term target ratio of 7 residents to every 3 jobs. To achieve this, we do have a few policy updates proposed for the center. First, non-residential uses are proposed to be required at grade along Yonge Street. And this is intended to reflect and support the future bus rapid transit that's planned for this stretch of Yonge Street. The policy would not apply to King Road since it does not have a planned bus transit route at this time. And also the existing amount of retail, commercial, or office floor area is proposed to be retained in new development. And this policy is really intended to protect the amount of existing commercial GFA in the area to help keep services and jobs nearby. And lastly, office development is encouraged at and or above grade, and this is intended to increase the amount of employment opportunities and provide a better balance between residents and jobs. And this OPA has also has some proposed updates regarding policies on built form. So for this center, there are a number of parameters that inform the built form, including the permitted uses, as noted earlier, angular plane policies for transitioning down to the surrounding neighborhood, the allowance for low and mid-rise buildings, and the diagram on the slide just provides an illustrative example of the different height policies proposed. So there's a height minimum of 2 stories, and this is to better align with the modern Main Street for the vision for the area. And there's also a proposed street wall height maximum of 4 stories. And by street wall, we mean that this is where the height where the building would need to step back. And as you can see on the diagram, to help support that human scale type of built form. And again, step back requirements from the street wall. There's also a proposed maximum building height of up to 6 or 8 stories, depending on the location. And I also wanted to note that the total building height would not include the mechanical penthouse level. And lastly, there will be a density schedule included in the OPA with proposed maximum FSIs to align with the different height permissions. And in terms of density considerations applied to the center, it was based on a number of factors. First, we looked at the overall growth forecast for the city and estimates made by the region and the city per the Watson report back in 2021. We also considered the suitable long-term built form for the area, and this was based on the intensification prioritization hierarchy, Chapter 3 policies in the official plan, and also the key directions report. We're also considering approved development within the area and also current development applications in process and concepts shared with city staff as an indicator of market demand and trends. We also looked at urban design policies such as angular plane, transition to neighborhood, and tower separation. And we're also undertaking an analysis to ensure that the FSI is achievable for the area and considering the design policies. So accordingly, we are proposing a range of density within this area, and this is to be assigned on a development block basis and which would apply per development site. So the proposed range of maximum density at this time is 1 to 2.5 FSI. And as mentioned, the proposed OPA will include a density schedule. And just another slide on density, just for some background information. FSI stands for floor space index, and this is a ratio of total gross floor area to the total developable site area. So using FSI provides the city, the development proponents, and the public with an idea of how much development may occupy a particular site. This density allocation is also very important when from an infrastructure planning perspective to ensure that we plan and build infrastructure that will support long-term growth in the area and the city overall. So just to provide some clarity on how the FSI number is applied, we're proposing the sidebar as shown on the screen. And the sidebar indicates how the FSI number informs the maximum total GFA that would be permitted. So as noted in the text, the maximum GFA is determined by multiplying the total developable land area by the allocated FSI. The sidebar clarifies that the developable area may include lands that are dedicated for public uses such as streets or parks, and it also clarifies that the developable area does not include lands that are precluded from development by operation of other policies of the OP, such as hazard land policies or natural heritage protection policies. So the diagram on the right is an illustration of the total site area, just as an example, shown in the red outline. But through a more detailed study, it may be determined that some of the site is not developable, and as such, those lands would not be included in the GFA calculation. And this is a common practice in the city, as well as other jurisdictions where FSI is used. Okay. Next slide, please. Thanks. The OPA also carries forward a lot of existing policies on unique design elements for this area. These include a proposed policy to create a gateway at the intersection of Bloomington and Yonge, and this is to create a sense of place and as an entrance to the local center. The OPA also carries forward other existing policies in the OP, including maintaining certain views, limiting setbacks, to create that pedestrian-oriented Main Street character. And lastly, the OPA carries forward design policies for low-impact development techniques. Next slide, thank you. In terms of the public realm, on the slide is a shot of the draft public realm schedule. And as you can see, it identifies a number of new planned parks in the area with the P symbol. And these proposed parks are mostly located just outside of the center's boundary. There are some parks, okay to continue, identified on the west side of Yonge Street farther south, including a linear park and also some south of King Road and north of Maple Grove. And in terms of new streets and active transportation, the proposed schedule identifies some new collector streets just south of Bloomington and a few other streets just outside of the local center boundary. And the schedule also identifies a number of existing and planned bike facilities such as bike lanes. Okay, and that brings me to the end of the presentation. And the recommendation is that the committee receives our presentation and refer comments back to staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so same process. Again, we'll go bring this back to committee for any questions or concerns. Ward 1 Councillor is going to start us off. Ms. Davidson, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I do commend staff. I was part of those calls where residents really did have an opportunity more than once to give their ideas about what they wanted their community to look like. And I thought staff was really knowledgeable and patient when the same things were asked over and over, because we all want to keep as much green space as possible. The mention of 6 to 8 stories, does that mean the 4 to 5 story limit that has been in this area, Ward 1 up till now, is now gone?
So the current OP does have a height maximum of 4 stories. So with this OPA, we're proposing to increase that height limit to between 6 and 8 stories.
And through you, Mr. Chair, does that come from the region or the province, or does it just sound, is it something the city wants?
So it was part of the city's work through our the background recommendation report, our key directions report. We are also looking at current development applications in the area, and also existing buildings and what heights they're at. And this area does have a planned rapid bus route along Yonge Street, so we are taking into the consideration of that as well.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Does that mean, because I was going to say, honestly, right now, I take it this is way down the road, because there really isn't a lot of transit options even on Yonge Street. You have to get off at Bloomington and walk, or you have to get off at King and walk. And the parallel street, that's a collector street. What does that mean, collector street? Because that area right now is a very hilly, natural area that we were hoping to keep as much as the green as possible. What is a collector street?
So in our OP, we have different types of streets. There's local streets, collector streets, and arterial streets, and they all have different requirements in terms of things like right-of-way widths. So a collector street is larger than a local street, but smaller than an arterial street.
And so through you, Mr. Chair, this assumes that that whole area will be developed and there'll be a reason to have a street, because there's nothing there now, but the assumption is that there will be.
Yeah, so on the public realm map, one of the planned collector streets, it's based on a development application in process where they have identified new public streets in that area.
Yes, thank you. Familiar with that. Thank you. Just 2 last questions. It talks about maintaining the skyline, being able to see, and I'm confused, because if you have 8 stories on all the way down Yonge Street, which I know has been proposed by a developer at one point, and also a view of the natural environment, how does that maintain if it were wall-to-wall buildings on Yonge Street? What does that mean?
Yeah, as part of the development application process, we do have staff in our urban design section that would be reviewing something like a view shed study if it's required for the development application, but it would be on a site-by-site basis.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, who defines natural heritage? There was a mention there of natural heritage. What is natural heritage, and who gets to call it?
Yeah, so our official plan in the land use schedule, there is different types of land uses, and part of the natural heritage could be a number of different land use designations, and as part of our greenway system as well.
Great. And the last thing, if through you, Mr. Chair, if I can say, even one of the most urgent things to me in Ward 1 right now is there's no connectivity. There's not one street in Ward 1, not Bathurst, Young, Bayview, or Leslie, that has a continuous sidewalk. And I know these plans are down the future, but I don't know if this is part of the OP. And I know these are regional roads, but connecting, the first step for us, I think, is getting connections so that people can walk to what's there now, never mind what's coming. And that's part of using public transit too. If you're too afraid to get to the bus because you got to walk on Yonge Street. So I'm putting a word in for including bike paths and footways that are maintainable in all season. Because it's a problem now. I hope we don't have to wait a long time to fix it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Davidson, would you be willing to move the motion to receive all comments? Thank you. Okay, very good. And anyone else have any questions on regarding Oak Ridge's local center, Mayor West?
Okay, thank you. I'll just be very quickly. One of the things I find exciting about the concept that we're putting here is that we're taking an area in the downtown section along Yonge Street in Oak Ridges, and we're creating opportunities for lots of different commercial activities, patios, restaurants, shopping, that type of thing. And these things are going to be close to close to Yonge Street and perhaps without the huge parking lots out front, although there's probably going to be parking in the back and so on. Is the vision here to make this look like a traditional downtown core area, like in a smaller type of a community? I mean, that's kind of the vision I get when I look at this plan. Lower rise buildings, not super high buildings. So you call this a low street wall. That looks a lot like a downtown core in a smaller community, like kind of the traditional downtown core of a community. Is that the idea here? Am I interpreting that right?
Yeah, so the policies do intend to create a modern Main Street. It's not intended to create a historic because of it's not like the heritage buildings in the village local center. It's a different context, but we are trying to get that Main Street feel. So, non-residential uses at grade with sort of like a continuous street wall that's up to 4 stories. Just to have lots of mix of uses, but it wouldn't be the historic context. It would be a modern Main Street.
Right. Okay. So I get that. I mean, we're not looking at century buildings that we're going to recreate or anything, but we're talking about the idea of that type of walkable, you park your car somewhere and then you can walk and shop and go out for dinner and that type of thing. Okay. Okay. I mean, further to my first conversation or my first question, I think it's important that now that we've kind of solidified this idea through the process that we've gone through up to this point in time, I think it'll be important for the folks in that area to come out and hear some of the comments. But one of the things I hope that we've considered, and I think we have, is the implications for this to be a dynamic commercial community. And I think what we're trying to do here is create a critical mass that can support some of the types of services, businesses, restaurants, and so on that may or may not be there right now, but we can add to the mix. So I think that's an important component. So anyway, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor West. Regional Local Councilor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for the presentation. And like the speakers before me, the mayor and the local councillor, I also envision this portion in City of Richmond Hill, a really particular special place. And I also, in particular, thank you for the presentation that includes the component that they're talking about, that the job opportunities. And I particularly pay attention of the live work unit. Through you, Mr. Chair, is the initial thinking now, this would be the kind of corridor, the local area whereby kind of promotion of live work area. And if it is, isn't it not just, well, maybe I stop here first and hear the answer.
Yes, so one of the permitted uses is listed is live work units. So that would continue to be one of the permitted uses in the local center.
Right. So this is the wish or intention of the city, allowing permitted use to have live work unit. On the other hand, I'm wondering, to the extent that our planning staff have observed in the past, perhaps not just only for this local area, would it be fair to say, maybe in a general sense, application or proposed development that will include live work unit in this area might have the same as in the past, or may not be that many? I just try to get a sense, while maybe permitted use, but what kind of uptick there may be to the extent that we know Through you, Mr. Chair.
I might ask Sibel to speak to this. That's all right.
Through you, Chair. It's not something that we've necessarily monitored in terms of uptake on live work units. It's certainly something that we would promote and encourage, especially when you see that there's a lot of entrepreneurialism in Richmond Hill. But I'm not sure if we've, I don't have a number in terms of, the kind of uptake that we've had to date.
That's fine. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I, for one, I think this is the live work unit, what is for the Oak Ridges area in this case, in the corridor there, local center. In other places where there would be transit supportable, this would help bring not only people coming in to live, but also creating the job opportunity, so to speak, but also bringing people that will come, people who are actually the what I call the foot traffic, onto the area. So that's why I'm asking those questions, and certainly looking forward to future development in this area, because this is something that we all look, or I for one look forward to seeing more and more. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, staff, for your response.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Davidson. Receive all comments. Anyone else want to discuss this? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, we move to our next presentation. It will be 4.1.3, the Newkirk Local Center. And here to present is Andrew Crawford.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Crawford.
All right. Hello and good afternoon, all committee members. My name is Andrew Crawford. I am the lead planner for the Newkirk Local Center OPA. Next slide. So I believe at one of the previous official plan update committee meetings, we had already discussed the results of the consultations that we had back in the fall. This slide here kind of summarizes it a little bit. In the interest of time, I'll breeze through it a little bit. But generally, there was support from the public that we recognized that this area around the Newkirk Local Center is a candidate for some intensification and development to occur with, an appropriate scale. But there was also, a need and desire to accommodate employment within these areas, as well as increased active transportation links both into and within the local center, as well as the need to really provide new additional public parks to support the growth within this area. And those are all certainly factors that we are considering and looking to implement through OPA 18.7. Next slide, please. The vision is mostly the same one that we had from the original proposed statement that we had back in the fall. The vision statement, just to read it out, is an affordable, livable, mixed-use community that is anchored by a transit station that connects commuters from across the city. In addition to this vision statement, we also have, as was alluded to, I think Spell made a very quick mention of character areas in her presentation, but the Newkirk Local Center, in recognition of the different characteristics of the area, is looking to implement 3 different character areas, and they each have their own vision, or miniature vision statement, I'll call it that. So for the northern character area, which really encompasses the GO Station lands and the areas surrounding it north of Major Mackenzie, east of the rail track, the vision statement is a transit-oriented mixed-use area adjacent to the GO rail station, and that will contain the majority of the employment uses within this area. So to contrast that, the area south of Major Mackenzie, east of the rail corridor, is known as the southern character area in the OPA, and that's really going to be continue to be a residential area, residential focused, with low and mid-rise buildings that will help transition from the center of the center to the residential areas surrounding it. And the western character area, west of the rail corridor, will continue to be what it is today for the most part, which is a collection of mid-rise apartment buildings, and we will allow for opportunities for infill development to occur within there. Next slide. So the land uses are up on the screen here. They're largely the same that are what is in place today. So we would allow for medium and high density residential, which would encompass anything from townhouses, triplexes, fourplexes, all the way up to apartment and condo style buildings. In terms of the commercial components, we would allow for office, commercial, and retail uses as standard. And we would also be looking through OPA 18.7 to add major office and major retail as permitted uses within the northern character area to allow for, again, increased focus on employment uses. And we'd also be allowing the typical uses of gas stations, community uses, parks and urban open spaces, and live work units, which are as they are permitted today. Next slide, please. So in terms of job creation, it is a very important characteristic as noted. A large portion of what is going to be designated the Newkirk Local Center is currently employment lands and are being converted through this OPA. We want to make sure that the local center continues to provide not only jobs to replace ones that are there today, but also that idea of a complete community to form for this area. So the long-term target, we are looking at to be 7 residents to 3 jobs, which will help us meet the PMTSA targets as well. And do this, we're looking at a couple policy approaches, including any development that is fronting Newkirk Road and Major Mackenzie Drive, that those will have at-grade retail or commercial uses, which is a fairly standard requirement along much of our corridors. And we're also going to strongly encourage that any development that fronts onto any parks or urban plazas in order to animate the spaces, that those areas really, we would like to see different types of retail and commercial uses there as well. And in the northern character area, again, the area that is subject to the employment conversion, we are going to propose a certain amount, a minimum amount of non-residential uses to provide jobs for the area as well within that area. Next slide. In terms of the built form, we are looking at a bunch of different factors in determining built form. Again, we want to be context sensitive, so each of the character areas will have a slightly different approach. We are looking at establishing a maximum height permissions in each of these areas, as well as a couple of minimum and maximum heights, such as Megan mentioned in her presentation, a minimum street wall. We're looking at potentially around 4 stories to really have a little bit more of a smaller scale feel, relate to the street better, and then buildings will step back from there as well. We're still in the process of developing the OPA and tinkering a little bit with our built form, but we're looking right now at maximum heights within the area of between 10 and 20 stories. Again, that will depend on which character area and which portion of the character area you are in. Closer to the center, obviously, we would be looking for higher heights closer to the GO station. Next slide, please. In terms of density considerations, Megan already did a very good job of discussing a lot of the density considerations. So in interest of time, I won't repeat the same things that she did. But in terms of Newkirk, we are looking, context sensitive in terms of the different heights that are permitted on these properties. We are all taking into consideration. We are proposing a maximum density per site of between 1.5 and 3 FSI. Again, closer to the GO station, you're likely to see the higher densities, and then that will kind of decrease as you get closer towards the edges in concert with the maximum heights that are being prescribed. And because this will be a protected major transit station area, we are including minimum densities as well of between 0.75 and 1 FSI, and that will help us meet the target that has been given to us over the long term. Next slide, please. So a couple of just unique design elements that we're looking to include as well in the OPA. encouraging to locate any building entrances towards the street, really to help animate that street and walkability character that we want. You know, this is next to a GO station. We anticipate people will come out of their buildings and walk to the GO station to commute out if they want. We're also looking really to provide focal points around our urban plazas and in different spots within the local center, and really different coordinated street elements to really help unify the entire area as one local center. And we also recognize that directly north of the local center, there is an existing employment area. We want to make sure that everybody is good neighbors to each other's. That maybe, you know, as you are with kids, you may be fine with each other, but we want to make sure they have their space, that they can play nicely with each other. So we do want specifically in areas adjacent to employment uses that we maybe focus some of our non-residential uses there, and some of the residential amenities are maybe faced away from some of our sensitive employment areas. Next slide. We're getting close to the end now. So the public realm schedule, these are some of the elements that we're looking to implement through this OPA. So the first one is a new public street on the GO station lands in the northern character area, which will serve not only to continue to provide public access to the GO station, but also to new development in that area. We're proposing to expand the existing Essex Parkette in the southern character area to accommodate new residential growth in the area. And we're also looking at establishing a crossing of the CN rail corridor for pedestrians and cyclists to really help connect into and outside of the area. So while there's not a lot of parks that are physically shown on the map here, we do have policies that are looking to require the implementation of urban plazas, which will be open spaces open to the public to use, as well as different pedestrian and cycling connections between sites. Those aren't shown on the map only because those will be flexible in terms of where they're located and will be established through the development process. So we don't want to necessarily restrict the location of where those can be at this time. Next slide, please. And just a couple of other unique matters. So there is a significant amount of parking at the GO station. We recognize that. We want to continue to make sure that there is connections and parking available for residents. But we want to make sure that those are located either underground or in structured parking so that we can free up land for other land uses and intensification. And as well, just a couple of other amendments you'll notice in the OPA to sections 4.5 and 4.8.2 of the official plan that just really deal with site-specific matters that are policies that are moving into the new character local center areas. Those will be changes you'll see in the OPA as well. Next slide. And we're at the end. So as always, the recommendation from this presentation will be, or at least from our recommendation as staff, will be that the committee receives this presentation and then all comments get referred back to staff. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Crawford. Okay, I'll bring it back to committee. Councillor Thompson, you want to go ahead with this one?
Thank you very much. And through the chair, I'd like to thank staff for the presentation. Do have a couple of questions, and it is mostly to the northern character, I guess we're calling it. And I just need a little bit of clarity on the built forms here. So when I go back to, I think it was slide 3, we talk about transit-oriented mixed-use area adjacent to the GO rail station containing the majority of employment uses. But when we look at the other character areas, we do talk about low, mid-rise, mid-rise apartment. So I'm trying to get, my head wrapped around what exactly we're looking at in terms of building types, density, height, that type of thing in the northern character.
Yep, so thanks for the question. Definitely for the Northern Character area, it is envisioned to really be a mixed use center. So that will involve buildings of that may have, your retail or commercial uses on the ground floor. We'd like to see, maybe some office in the podium on the floors above that, and then there could be a residential tower on top of that. So that's one example of a mixed use building. We are trying to keep the policy language a little bit flexible to allow developers to really build what either, what the market suits or what they need to develop. So there is also the potential for standalone office buildings as well. We'll leave, the policy language flexible enough to allow for that. If someone would like to build a small office building, we'll leave the policy language open for that.
Thank you for the answer. Through the chair, I notice on slide 6, you talk about maximum height of 10 to 20 stories. So I'm envisioning this is what you're looking at in the northern area would be, because I unless I misunderstood what, mid and low rise would be, is 10 to 20 considered high rise, or what do you consider that?
So the definition in the OP right now would be high rise would be, I believe it is above 8 or 10 stories. Oh, it's about 9 and up. My apologies. I knew it was somewhere in that range. But the existing OP policies would say 9 stories and above. You're officially getting into what we classify as high rise. So yes, it would be within the Northern Character area, especially. Heights in that area would be reaching the 20-story range. We'd certainly be classifying those buildings as high rise.
Okay, thank you very much. Those were my questions.
Okay, thank you. And you were willing to move the recommendation?
You read my mind.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Okay, next to speak is Councillor Tree.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair to our staff, I'm echoing also Councillor Thompson's questions. This area, I understand, I know in the southern part, across the Metric, there are a lot of apartment already. I think I don't have a question for that part. On your west side, we do have, I think, 2 condominiums very high beside the Gotrin. I think in that area, I don't have a problem. It's on the north side. I know around the Gotrin station, we have a lot of parking lot. South of the Center Street, there are a few manufacturers on the north south of the center on your north side. My question is, if you build up 10 to 20 high stories there, are we going to maybe using the existing parking lot? Where are you going to find those land? This is my question, because this is Gotrin. Every day we have a lot of visitors come here. How are we going to build up a proposal 10, 20 floors, and we have enough space for those Gotrin goers every day? That's my question.
Yeah, so thanks for the question. So we have been definitely reaching out to Metrolinx on a couple of occasions to discuss the Newkirk Local Center and the plan and vision for this area. And they're one of the approaches that we would certainly take is that any existing commuter parking that is surrounding the Richmond Hill GO station would generally get moved into either structured parking that can be contained within the base of a building, or would be moved underground. And that's something that certainly Metrolinx has discussed with us, as well as that if lands are sold off for development, the existing parking lots, that there would be some sort of guarantee that a certain number of spaces are provided in the development that would go towards or be dedicated for commuter parking.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the parking is more important. We don't want to build up something and packed 3 years for all the Gotrin goers. It's going to be a disaster for our city, right? I really make the call to our water tour councillors a lot. Just complain about traffic. Another concern is the traffic. If you drive along the Metric, does not matter when time. On the Bayview intersection, I take around maybe 10 minutes from Bayview to Yonge Street. just along the Benjamin is huge impact of the traffic flow. Anything considering for the future traffic congestions along the Benjamin?
So Major Mackenzie, as you may know, is a regional road. So the York Region does have jurisdiction over that road. In terms of widenings, I'm not sure if their plan currently is anticipating widening. I know if you start going west of the Newkirk Local Center towards Yonge Street, you are getting into the historic village area. So there may be difficulties in widening some of those areas. York Region is also looking at a long-term implementation of mixed-use Viva bus lines along Major Mackenzie, which will have a stop at Newkirk as well and serve this area. And as well, you know, if someone is going to move into a new building directly adjacent to a GO station, a lot of those people are likely to be using the GO train rather than driving during rush hour all the time. So that would certainly be our hope, is that not everybody is going to be driving along Major Mackenzie and building to the traffic there. And that's why we're trying to build up and intensify some of the areas surrounding our transit stations.
Okay, thank you so much. Maybe this question is not for you anymore. I want to ask this question to our Deputy Mayor. So, Godwin, do you have any updates regarding to the Aggie Mills? I know we have GO train cross there. Do we have any updates? How often or how long we're going to wait to build up underground path along that's Aggie Mills? Yes. The second question is along the Major. What is the regional's plan to upgrade Major traffic? Thanks.
Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Councillor Tree. I'm a bit surprised you raised the question direct to me because I know Mayor West as well as my counterpart in the region, all three of us is certainly very much, well, of course, local councillor Thompson as well. And I think we all are actually want to have that particular overpass on Alchemy sooner than later. And in fact, there is, I think, already mentioned regional associates priority project. As well, your question specific when, I think that is actually, if I may, Councillor Tree, that's something you might, I don't know if it's popular or not, Mr. Chair. I understand Mayor West has also raised that question at one of our recent regional council meeting. So perhaps that if Mayor West has something more to share with us, that would be great. Thank you for your question anyway. We all wanted that the overpass on Alchemy Street there sooner than later.
Thank you. And Mayor West, anything to add there?
Yep. So the overpass issue, I mean, the region is working on it, and they are, going to implement that as soon as possible. It's a very important. It'll be overpass, not an underpass. I think that's been established. The other part of your question was
Major Street.
Okay, so Major Mackenzie is, I think, as mentioned by Mr. Crawford, going to be at some point in time a transit corridor, which it is not really now, but the region is also working on longer term capital plans for that to become a more important transit corridor than it is now. So, I mean, I think in relation to your question, the evolution towards a more transit-oriented community in that area is probably appropriate. The other thing I think to keep in mind, and Mr. Crawford and staff, correct me if I'm saying something out of turn here, but the parking lot in question, or both parking lots, are owned by Metrolinx. So in order for them, I seriously doubt that they'll be redeveloped in the next little while. But if they are redeveloped, I believe in this plan, the expectation is to replace the parking with parking. I mean, we're obviously going to need parking for the GO station there. So that, I think that's an important component of the plan, and I think you're right to bring that up.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Silivets, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for the presentation again to staff. Could we put slide number 9 on the screen, please? if it's possible. Thank you. I really appreciate the delineation of the three areas, specifically south of Major Mac, which is Ward 5. I just have one question. When you look at the southern character area south of Major Mac, your red line delineating the southern border, is that Palmer or Wenlock? Do you know?
Sorry, my mind is drawing a blank right now.
That's
The
okay.
Exact street. It is 1 block south of Major Mackenzie.
1 block. Okay, so if you could get back to me on that, I'd really appreciate it. I'd like to know where that delineation is, whether it's Palmer or Wenlock. And then on the east side, that unnamed street to the east of Essex, is that Norfolk?
That one
is
I know for
Norfolk.
sure is Norfolk. Yes.
Okay, because we have a proposal coming to us at council public meeting on May 16th, and that area is involved. So that would be very helpful to me with just a little bit more information. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Oh. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just a couple comments based on what was brought up here. I think the Major Mac corridor is going to be, very important going forward. We make these official plan amendments with a 30, 40, 50 year horizon in consideration. And, in that time frame, Highway 7 was a 1-lane road either way. And now it's such an important connector for Vaughan and Markham. And in the same way, Major Mackenzie will be a connector between Vaughan and Markham, and with a lot of important community uses along those roads, a lot of intensification and a proper Viva bus rapid transit. So this local center is where the CEO of Metrolinx has said he'd like to ultimately see the endpoint for the young subway line. So looking into the future, I think it's a very important portion of Richmond Hill and a very important consideration in this special plan update. And I'm just wondering, is the designation by the region of an MTSA automatically limit our ability to protect for employment within their delineated boundary? I know it's not a land usage thing, but if someone comes forward now with a residential proposal, do we have the right to insist on employment within this MTSA?
If I can pass it over to the manager of policy.
So presently the lands are designated employment. So it'll be through this OPA that we would be changing the designation from employment corridor and employment area to Newkirk Local Center. And once that designation change has happened, then there's an opportunity for mixed use development. What Andrew's suggesting in terms of this OPA is that we still require a quantum of employment uses in this particular, especially within that northern character area, given its historic use as employment lands. And also when looking at the other 2 character areas, we see that might be a bit more challenging to get like a really good mix of use. But this area really does have that great opportunity because you've got people working just north of it. You've got the GO station. So there's a really good opportunity for a mix of use. And we're looking for a certain quantum to continue to be located in that particular northern character area. But okay. I guess just to answer to your question, in terms of the PMTSA component, as I said before, we are required to include permitted uses within those MTSAs, and those would be protected from appeal once the OPA is brought forward for approval.
Okay, So yeah, so it's this council's discretion and it's through this OPA process that we're setting the uses and that changing it effectively from employment to mixed use. Now, there's a very strict criteria for employment that only can happen once every 10 years in an MCR currently. And for lands further to the north, would they be subjected to an employment conversion request and it can only be changed every 10 years by the region? Is that, am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that would be correct. Under our current policies in the official plan and the current in effect policies of growth plan and the planning act, I think it's the planning act as well. Employment lands that are designated are protected from conversion until the time of a municipal comprehensive review, which is the process we're in right now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks for the presentation. We have a motion on the floor from Councillor Thompson. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, so the next and final and not last but not least is our Yonge and Carville 16th Avenue redevelopment area. Oh, did I jump one? Oh, sorry. Mr. Very important Village Local Center overview and proposed amendments. Again, a presentation from Megan Cobold. Sorry. Yeah, you have up to 15 minutes to address council with this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I will now present an overview of OPA 18.6, which is on the Village Local Center. So again, back at the March 2nd OPUC meeting, we shared information regarding public feedback on this OPA. And for the Village Local Center, there was support for the proposed vision, which I will go over on the next slide. Since the key directions report recommended providing a smaller boundary for the local center and redesignating the balance of lands as regional mixed-use corridor, there was a lot of discussion about what the local center boundary should be. And this is something we intend on presenting to the public this spring for further consultation, and I will go over that in a later slide. And in terms of built form, in what ultimately becomes the Village Local Center, there remains a strong desire for that form to be limited to mostly low and mid-rise buildings, and that these buildings provide for a high proportion of office, commercial, and community uses in order for the center to function as a vibrant, revitalized center. And comments also caution that redevelopment should not be at the expense of losing heritage value in this area, and that we need to ensure that the transportation network supports growth within this center and beyond. Okay. Next slide, please. Thank you. So on to some of the details of the proposed OPA. To start, the proposed OPA includes an updated vision that is as follows. The Village Local Center is envisioned to be a village within the city that's vibrant, walkable, accessible, and green, and that provides opportunities for entertainment, community gathering, and events, and to appreciate the city's history and diversity. So again, we're going to be keeping the vision in mind for the policy updates that are proposed. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. The OPA also has some proposed updates to the land use permissions. Most of the permitted uses are the same as what's currently permitted, but the proposed change is that a lot of these uses are proposed to be permitted throughout the local center to really support that mixed use vision, whereas in the OP currently, it only allows certain uses in certain areas of the local center. Another proposed update is again using the term high density residential instead of the term residential apartments. And again, this is to be consistent with the defined terms in the official plan and not to be confused with high rise. However, the OPA is carrying forward and recognizing some existing OP policies that may allow for low and high rise buildings depending on the area. The remaining land uses listed are a continuation of what's currently permitted. So this includes low density residential, medium density residential such as townhouses, high density residential, as I mentioned, office. And again, this use is carried forward from the current OP, but the changes that is proposed to be permitted throughout the local center. And this would be the same with commercial and retail. And we're also carrying forward permitting community uses, parks and urban open space, and also live work units. Next slide, please. And in terms of job creation, there is a long-term target to achieve a ratio of 7 residents to every 3 jobs. To meet this, there are a few policy updates proposed for this center. First, non-residential uses are proposed to be required at grade along Major Mackenzie. The OP currently only requires this on Yonge Street. So this update is intended to reflect and support the existing bus rapid transit on Yonge and the future bus rapid transit route on Major Mac. Also, the existing amount of retail, commercial or office floor area is proposed to be retained in new development. And again, this policy is intended to protect the amount of existing commercial GFA in the area, especially in the areas that are identified in Schedule A9 in the OP, which is proposed to be deleted to allow for an expansion of land use permissions. And lastly, office development is encouraged at and or above grade, and this is intended to increase the amount of employment opportunities and to provide a better balance between residents and jobs. And next slide, please. Thank you. The OPA also has some proposed updates regarding policies on built form. For the center, built forms proposed to be informed by the permitted uses, the established development and character of the area, as it contains quite a few heritage properties, angular plane policies for transitioning down to the surrounding neighborhood, and also to protect the views of the historic church spires. A height minimum of 2 stories, as we're trying to avoid new 1-story buildings that wouldn't really align with the vision for the area. There's also a proposed street wall maximum height of 3 stories. And again, by street wall, we mean this is where the height where the building would need to step back to help support that human scale built form. There's also a proposed base building height, and that's referring to the podium of the buildings. And this would be a maximum of 6 stories and would only apply north of Wright and Dunlop streets. And again, the built form's informed by the setback requirements from these street walls and base buildings. There's also a proposed building maximum height of 9 stories south of Wright and Dunlop streets, and a maximum of 15 stories north of Wright and Dunlop streets. And lastly, there will be a density schedule included in the OPA with a proposed maximum FSIs that would align with the different height permissions. Okay, again, with the considerations for density applied to this OPA, it's the same list as what I went over in my previous presentation. So for this center, the proposed range of maximum density at this time is between 1 and 3.5 FSI. Depending on the location of the development block and permitted uses within that area. And similar to the Newkirk Local Center, and given that this local center is also within the PMTSAs, we are also proposing minimum density targets that are to be achieved through new development. At this time, we are proposing minimums of 0.5 FSI to 1.5 FSI. And again, these density allocations will be identified on a schedule specific to this local center. The OPA also proposes a number of new unique design policies and also some being carried forward for this area. These include a proposed policy to require design briefs as part of a complete application, and this is to address the character and heritage of the area. It also carries forward policies related to a continuous street wall and also includes a new proposed policy on the street wall height, as I mentioned on the previous slide. The OPA also carries forward the direction to apply coordinated street features in this area, such as paving, planting, signage, and banners. The OPA also carries forward a policy regarding applying the 45-degree angular plane from Yonge Street to maintain the views of the historic church spires. And lastly, it also carries forward the policy regarding taking a 30-degree angular plane measurement from Church Street for transition. So in terms of the public realm, on the slide is a shot of the draft public realm schedule. As you can see, it identifies a number of existing parks in the area. At this time, new park expansions are proposed to occur outside of the local center. However, the policies do encourage the creation of new urban plazas and new development. In terms of street and active transportation, the proposed schedule identifies some new streets, including an extension to Crosby Street from Yonge, connecting from Benson Avenue down to Wright Street. And that's showed in the gray color line. And the OPA also shows the proposed Elizabeth Street extension down to Major Mackenzie. And again, the alignment of these new streets would be determined via the development application process. And as noted on the slide, what's shown on the schedule for these streets is shown conceptually at this time. And the schedule also identifies a number of existing and planned bike facilities in the area, which are shown in the yellow colored lines. In terms of other unique matters for this area, the policies continue to support the conservation of cultural heritage resources and also consider land use compatibility where non-residential uses abut the neighborhood. And there's also a proposed policy that requires new development to replace public parking spots if the redevelopment is on city parking facilities. Okay, so that concludes the overview of the proposed updates specifically to the Village Local Center lands. At this point, I would like to briefly highlight for the committee how the OPA will affect lands that are immediately adjacent to the village, located in the former Uptown and Civic districts. So just to orient you, the Uptown district, as it was formerly known, focused on lands in the north end of the village, while the Civic district focused on lands in the south end, south of Major Mackenzie Drive. The Village OPA proposes to do away with the district nomenclature since it was associated with the previous and now repealed Downtown Local Center secondary plan. So therefore, the policies that reference the Uptown and Civic districts are proposed to be deleted. The OPA also proposes to redesignate lands that fall within these former districts from Downtown Local Center to Regional Mixed Use Corridor, as highlighted on the image on the right in this slide. And the flanking lands shown in white is what's proposed to change from Downtown Local Center to Regional Mixed Use Corridor. And this change would be reflected in Schedule A2 of the city's OP, which is the land use schedule. And in redesignating these lands, the Regional Mixed Use Corridor land use permissions as set out in the current OP will apply. We also propose to amend the preamble text in this chapter that deals with the Village Local Center to clarify that the centers plan to accommodate intensification at a scale less than the KDAs and generally less than the abutting regional corridor. So this reinforces the OP's policies on growth management and also provides clarity on where the Village Local Center fits in the city's overall city structure. And lastly, the OPA will propose some new policy language respecting parks and open space in the section that deals with the regional mixed use corridor. And in particular, a new policy will speak to the expansion of Kozak Park, which is located just east of Yonge Street, north of Crosby, and a new policy identifying the creation of a destination park at the southwest corner of Yonge Street and Major Mackenzie Drive on city-owned lands where the public library is. So more detailed planning regarding the city-owned lands would occur after the MTSA and corridors OPA, wherein the city could embark on a master plan process and work in partnership with one or more development proponents to fully develop the site in a mixed use form as per the recommendations of the investment attraction strategy. And next slide, please. Thank you. So in the fall, we'll also resume work on the MTSA and corridor OPA. And that's when we will deal with the regional mixed use corridor beyond the lands flanking the Village Local Center in this batch of OPAs. And this will allow us to consider the corridor more comprehensively. We'll also be exploring potential boundary adjustments and possible changes to height and density policies. And similar to this batch of OPAs, we'll be delineating PMTSAs along the corridors. Next Next slide, please. And that brings me to the end of the presentation. Again, the recommendation is that the committee receive the presentation and refer comments back to staff. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, we'll bring it back to committee. Who wants to start off with this one? Councillor Tree?
I might have through you, Mr. Chair, to our staff. I might have many questions, so I will pick up something more important. The first one is timeline. I heard we have a timeline to addressing and invite more public hearing. Can you repeat the timeline? It's May 7, right?
So the OPAs will become public on May 11th.
May 11th?
On
Okay.
June 7th, we will have a public open house. And on June 20th, we will have the council public meeting.
Okay, the reason I'm asking questions here, because this is really our official plan. I don't know what is our last public meeting sessions yet, because I'm elected in November 2022. Before that, within 6 months, I never heard any public meeting. I want city staff organize not only one open house on June 7, because it's too late. I would suggest in maybe May or July, we hold another open house. I want more public has opportunity to look at our plan and discuss, contribute. So far, within 6 months, I never see this public meeting at all. I want Q&A session. At that time being, everyone from community can express their concerns. Because we do have our official plan here, I want more sessions for open house. One time, no, not enough. This is my first one. It's so important. I want public be participate in our discussion. And I don't want to see a paper just created by our city staff, approved by council without the involvement of community. That's not good. Okay, this is my first question, so important. The second one, let's go back to the PPT here. You know, in downtown Hall, the biggest concern is for me, from my side, is traffic. So on Yonge Street, we only have one line because the second line is permitted parking. From morning until, okay, I'll say 24 hours, except nighttime, we don't have problems. How in this plan addressing the traffic concerns? If you propose like a 15, 13 floors on Yonge Street, and you are only one line available for both directions, it's gonna be a disaster. How can you address that? That's my second question. Thanks.
Thank you. So with the proposed OPA, we do have some proposed new streets in the center, and that would allow for additional opportunities for movement for vehicles and pedestrians and cyclists to help maybe alleviate some of the traffic from Yonge Street through these new streets.
Do you mind explain more details? Because I see Elizabeth Street extension, that's the only one street. Anything new?
So there are two proposed new streets for the center. There's one that's an extension to Crosby, and there's also one farther south, the Elizabeth Street extension.
To be honest, I'm not expert here. Crosby will extend it only from Ward to Ward 4 or backwards. And for now, south down to the south side. So far, it was only one Yonge Street. Maybe in future, it experts also another one in Ward 2. There could be another street. I'm just concerned about it's going to be solve our problems if we propose 14, 13 floors along the Yonge Street.
I guess just to add, our public realm schedule also proposes additional connections for cycling. They were shown in that yellow color. So the idea is that hopefully that will incentivize people to use their bikes as well.
I think the second question I got about the street. Third one, parking. We are discussing with many residents regarding parking problems. What is the proposal from city perspective? Look at currently in our center, as long as there's event, our cars on the street. If you can imagine, we have this plan in front where the people can park their car. Because if you want to introduce more visitors come to downtown, this is really the biggest question for us. Where are they going to park?
Thank you. So the OPA does have a proposed policy related to retaining the existing amount of parking spaces that are, if city-owned parking lots were to be redeveloped, we still want to maintain those existing spaces and beyond.
Okay, I hope when your official update plan come out, I will pay attention to the parking and hope your parking plan can meet at least some of the requirements. The first one regarding to the legacy or the heritage home. On the Major Mac and Young Street, we do have a few heritage, for example, including the churches, also including some old 100 years houses. The house, when I came to Richmond Hill, was there circled by a yellow line on the corner of Major Mac and Young. And for 13 years past, that area is still empty. I'm assuming we have the same issue from Ward 2 as well. My question is, what is our proposal for that land without any usage? If you look at downtown, the south side of the Major Mac, on the other side, the south side, we have still some empty space, living there at least 13 years, as I know. So what is our proposal to boosting those land? Thanks.
I don't have an answer specifically for that property, but in general, the local center is proposing to expand permissions to really get that mixed use vision in place.
So is that going to be city through a bylaw to enforce the land if you live in our downtown core or in our village areas? If you stop building or you just stay free land there for certain years, can we issue any bylaw saying if you don't build anything, you don't sell anything, the city going to take over and take any actions? That's my legal question. I don't know if it's answered correct or not. I'm just through there. The land there, the house there for many, many years, no one look at after it. What is our city stand? Thanks.
I may ask someone to help me answer this question if possible.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just some clarification. Are you asking about a sunset like bylaw? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, from bylaw perspective, if the land, houses, legacy system, whatever, in our village area, in this proposal or plan, do we have any bylaw to enforce if you house or land, free land, live there more than 10 years, 20 years without any constructions, without any proposal, can we enforce to sell it? Is that possible?
At the moment, we don't have the authority to do that. And specifically not through this plan. If we are staff, as you know, through another motion are looking into the possibility or investigating what the sunset clause could look like, but at this point, we don't have that ability.
Great, thank you. I think I used my time. I'll go back for the second round. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. And through the chair, thank you for the presentation. And I can't remember, did Councillor Tree move to receive and for comments? No.
Tree, you're willing to move the comments be received? Okay, so the motion's on the floor. Go ahead.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure a couple of things wouldn't really change that we currently have. And I'm thinking about the village core design guidelines that are currently in place and what the impact that this would have in terms of the boundaries. I don't think that's going to change anything there. Would I be correct in that assumption?
Thank you. The proposed OPA for the village local center is not changing anything regarding that design guideline document.
Right, perfect. Thank you. So I do have to ask a couple of questions, and we had delegates that came up before asking about the extended streets, also asking about, the particular homes on Major Mac, that basically if the changes go ahead here, then technically those homes will now become, I guess, non-conforming if they're not, because at grade they won't be, non-residential because they're still residential. So I can see the types of concerns that they have about both the streets and the homes. And I know they spoke about that E word that we don't like to talk about here. I think that's, some people look at that as being worse than the next letter in the alphabet. How can we put their minds at ease? Like, it seems to me that although we're putting this into the plan, it's not like we're doing anything or telling them that they have to change anything with their properties or anything else. So I'm just wondering, can somebody actually just comment and put it out there as to what this actually means?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'll take a crack at it. The official plan is the vision for the council and the city. It does not depict, we're not in the habit of business of building roads or building houses or anything of that nature. It's simply to present the vision for all future landowners and the citizens of the city to understand where we are going as a community. Typically, however, infrastructure, when it's needed, is built through the development process. So in the event that a landowner does some land assembly or requires services to be installed, we would evaluate the opportunities to facilitate that development depending upon the level of service that's necessary to support that approval. But certainly at this point in time, the city, as I say, is not in the habit of building that type of infrastructure, and is typically acquired through the development approval process.
Right. Thank you. Through the chair, I appreciate that. So basically, it's really just providing opportunities for the future. Okay. I wanted to tap into something that Regional Councillor DePaula had mentioned, and I'm looking at those lands that you highlighted to the north, and talking about how that will move to regional mixed use. And I believe currently we have employment lands there. So the same question, I guess, kind of applies here. This would no longer be part of that once in 10-year thing for conversion of employment lands, or, am I wrong on that?
Thanks. So the proposed OPA, it's only proposing to redesignate the lands that are currently designated downtown local center to regional mixed use corridor. The portion that does have the employment designation, that would be for a later OPA that we'd be putting forward, not through this OPA.
Okay, so that was just what might be possible in the future. It's not saying that's what's happening right now.
Yes.
Okay, good. Kozak Park. I was kind of caught off guard seeing that one in the proposal here. This is a very small park that's situated in between some houses, so you'll have to bring me up to speed how we're expanding and in what way.
So the Kozak Park expansion, there's currently an OP policy, an exception policy that speaks to the expansion of the park. At this time, we don't have further details about all of the details about the park expansion. Other than that, we just wanted to recognize that existing OP policy, and also the proposed parks in the parks plan.
Thank you, through the chair. So then, if I understand correctly, this would be an opportunity thing again. If the properties abutting that park came up for sale, then that might be where we would go with that. I'm a little confused.
Through you, Mr. Chair, similar to the question about roads. Again, we're looking at opportunities to secure parkland through the development review process. And as the Ms. Coppell has mentioned, it is identified as something the city wishes to acquire or secure in the future through the parks plan. But again, we would only typically look at opportunities through the development review process to secure that additional land. And then, of course, we would go through the capital budgeting process to determine when that improvement would take.
I definitely appreciate that. Through the chair, Councillor Tree had brought up something about traffic, and I know that when I was in the group that I was in back in November with the official plan sessions that were being held at that time, there was some talk about potential of ring roads, and I think one of the ones that was brought up for this particular area was Pugsley Avenue, I believe, is lines up directly with Enford Road. But again, this would only be talking about an opportunity because you would have to go right through those Quebec Corps lands in order to connect those two. So again, you'd be looking at opportunities, but there's also homes that, are on Stevenson Crescent that obviously would be affected to do something like a ring road. Was there any other thoughts about the potential of ring roads to alleviate traffic off of Yonge Street?
I may ask Isabel to speak to this.
So we've been working with our transportation team in developing the OPA, and they're the ones that are working on the transportation master plan. So we have identified a few road extensions to support growth within the village. Outside of the village, we'll be looking at other opportunities through that MTSA and corridors OPA and or the housekeeping OPA. So we'll identify additional streets. But I think what's really important to keep in mind is when we introduced OPA 18.3, we talked about a mobility hierarchy. So through these center-specific OPs, we're really trying to reinforce that mobility hierarchy. So all of these OPAs have active transportation routes planned or existing showing on them. And with the additional density of development and the introduction of more non-residential uses, the vision is that we're going to have people being able to live, work, and play within their community. And with that, there'll be more use of transit to get, obviously you want to get outside of your community as well, but the use of other forms of moving around the city, including shared vehicles, obviously transit, electric bikes, the whole range. And by having all of those options available and the network to support those options, the demand and the congestion that we feel right now on our streets will start to go down, even though you're seeing an increase in population and jobs in the city. So that's the big vision. That was definitely the big vision that we were working with, last summer, and that's what we're trying to advance through these OPAs.
That's terrific. Thank you. Through the chair, thank you for allowing me to get all my questions in. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Anyone else want to speak on this? Mayor West.
Thank you. I know, just very briefly, because I know we're trying to get through this, but I do want to, I've been familiar with this area for quite some time, and we've been through many, many frustrating iterations about having the area redevelop and become revitalized. And I think that the OP is very important in that process to see that vision of a real revitalized, great, community in that area. I mean, I'm not going to go into all this, but, traffic and parking are going to definitely be things that are going to be top of mind as we move forward. So I want staff to really concentrate on that. And I know you are, but I think that I just wanted to reiterate that. Just very, very generally, I'm hearing the densities and the heights that are allowed in this area in the new OP are actually not all that radically different than the old OP. Is that correct?
Thanks. So the current OP, there is a different height permissions depending on which district you are
Right.
in. So in the village district, it's up to 5 stories. So with the proposed OPA, we're proposing up to 9 stories. In the portion that's north of Wright and Dunlop Streets, in the current OP, it does allow for 9 to 15 in certain areas. And that's being recognized through the proposed policies in the OPA as well, up to 15 stories for that area.
Okay, I mean, I get it, time goes on and the heights and densities, the demands are a little higher, but I'm pleased that we're taking that stance because I've always maintained that this area is like, fitting something bigger into something that, is very constrained. And I think I understand the 30-degree angular plane on Church. I think that's a good idea because it allows that kind of protection. I mean, there's limited area in that area to, we can't be blowing the doors off height and density in that area, or the problems that we're talking about are going to get a lot worse. But on the other hand, we want to allow the opportunities for redevelopment so that we also get the revitalization. So I'm not going to go into it any further than that, but that would be my concern. And I just want to have staff continue to be very cognizant of this. This is an area that really requires a very surgical approach. And I'm hoping that this is what we're taking, and I think it is. So that would be my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor West. Okay, I don't see anyone else indicating they want to speak on this one. So we've got a motion on the floor from Councillor Treat to receive all comments and refer them back to staff. All in favor? Yeah. Any opposed? Carries. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Now, our next presenter is the Yonge and 16th, Yonge and Carville KDA with an overview of proposed amendments, a presentation by Chun Chu, a senior planner, and is expected to be 10 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Chu.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee members. I am the second last act. Thank you for your patience. I'm Chun Chu, and I'm leading the official plan amendment for the Yonge and Carville or 16th Avenue Key Development Area. I'll be using the acronym KDA often, which is short for Key Development Area. Next slide, please. At the March 2nd Official Plan Update Committee meeting, we shared information regarding public feedback on the OPAs for the 4 growth centers. For the Yonge and Carville or 16th Avenue KDA, we learned that there is support for the proposed vision for this area, which I'll elaborate on later in the next slide. There is also lots of support for this KDA to incorporate a mix of uses and a mix of building types, ranging from low-rise to high-rise development. We also heard that affordability is important to both residents and businesses. The public also want this area to provide community services, including new parks, as well as new streets, and an active transportation network that will minimize traffic congestion. We also learned that features like the Hillcrest Mall, the German Mills Creek, and the nearby David Dunlop Observatory continue to be considered as distinguishing features in this area. Next slide, please. The vision for the Yonge and Carville or 16th Avenue KDA is a community that is walkable, sustainable, green, and vibrant with a people-friendly and shopping focus. And as mentioned before, the public is supportive of this vision. Next slide, please. In terms of land use permissions for this KDA, there is no proposed changes to the uses that are presently listed in Chapter 4 of the official plan. These uses are also listed here on this slide. These land use permissions support a higher density development and a mix of uses. Next slide, please. Because the KDA will be served by the BRT and 2 potential transit systems, we want to capitalize on these infrastructure and bring jobs to this area. Therefore, we are seeking to achieve a long-term target of 7 residents to 3 jobs for this KDA. We also want to maintain at minimum 15% of the total gross floor area, or GFA, in the KDA to be allocated for non-residential development. This is a target that we wish to monitor and maintain over the long term. Currently, the KDA's non-residential GFA is just over 50%. To achieve these two targets, we are proposing a number of policies to support jobs, and these are requiring retail and commercial at grade along arterial streets, as well as on local and collector streets. We also require retail and commercial along the market promenade at grade and where feasible on floors above within podiums. This is a new policy, and I'll show you later on a map where that market promenade is. The OPA would encourage office development along arterial streets and near transit stations. And lastly, the OPA requires existing non-residential GFA to be maintained or increased over the long term. Next slide, please. The built form in the KDA will be shaped by a number of elements. To begin with, the permitted uses include medium and high-density residential uses, as well as major office uses. These point to a higher density development. The minimum height for buildings is 3 stories. We will be introducing a maximum street wall height, but that is still to be determined. The maximum base building height continues to be 6 stories, and there are step back requirements from base buildings. The maximum height of any building will be based on the prescribed density for the development block, and at the same time, not protrude the 45-degree angular plane if the building is located adjacent to a neighborhood. Next slide, please. As noted in Megan's and Andrew's presentations, the densities forecasted for these centers are based on the city structure and overall growth forecast. They also consider recommendations made by the Key Directions report. And as a part of the analysis for this KDA, we looked at approved development applications and active applications in the pipeline. We also considered urban design principles that include tower separation and minimum floor plate size of towers. As a result, we are proposing a range of maximum densities by development blocks that range from 2 to 7 floor space index, or FSI. The minimum densities would be between 1 and 2 FSI, depending on the location of the buildings. And similar to the other OPAs, these maximum density allocations will be identified on a schedule specific to this KDA. Next slide, please. This slide shows the public realm for the Yonge and Carville or 16th Avenue KDA. The red line is the KDA boundary. The dark gray lines are collector streets, while the light gray lines are local streets. The KDA boundary is proposed to expand northerly to Bayf Boulevard and to expand southerly to Oak Avenue. The street network is changed slightly from the 2018 draft secondary plan, and it is based on cues we took from the master plans of the 2 major landowners in the northwest and northeast quadrants. The dotted blue and red circles are signalized intersections. The market promenade that was mentioned previously is shown here as a thick pink line, and it runs east-west, connecting the 2 northern quadrants. For parks, the existing parks are shown as green, while the proposed parks are shown with a P symbol. I'll note that urban plazas as private parks will not be shown on the OPA schedules, but we do encourage them to be created in future developments. We continue to show the expansion of Spruce Avenue Park, as well as the expansion of the William Duncan Park, which includes a linear park that runs along the rail corridor. We also propose a trail system that follows the same rail corridor, and it is shown as a dotted pink line. The KDA will connect with the David Dunlop Observatory through a bridge crossing located next to the Bridgeview Park. In terms of public transit, the proposed temporary train storage facility for the TTC that will support the TTC subway expansion to high-tech station. This temporary storage facility will be located in the southeast quadrant, shown as a yellow rectangle, and we are advocating for a future GO train station here in the same location after the storage facility ceases to operate. The TTC subway line is still shown as being realigned on Yonge Street, and we are advocating for a subway station at the northeast intersection of Yonge and 16th Avenue. And lastly, the pink solid circles on Yonge Street are the BRT stations. Next slide, please. There are a few design elements that are unique to this KDA. Firstly, there is a policy that speaks to a gateway at the Yonge and Carville or 16th Avenue intersection. This is to provide a sense of arrival at this major center, and we would like the gateway to be announced through architecture design, landscaping, and other public realm elements. We would also like this KDA to have interesting visual focal points that are created by a coordination of building materials, streetscape elements, landscaping, and public arts. This KDA can benefit from being connected with the David Dunlop Observatory and Park through wayfinding and other design elements at the northeast quadrant. And lastly, the Market Promenade that runs across the northern quadrants is envisioned to be an enhanced public realm with attractive pedestrian and cycling amenities, including wide sidewalks and coordinated street walls. Next slide, please. Other matters that are unique to the KDA are a proposed future school site in the northeast quadrant. In terms of transit, the OPA will protect for public easements and lands for a future GO train station and a future TTC subway station. With respect to interim development, the OPA carries over policies from the 2018 draft secondary plan, and they permit limited expansion of existing retail and commercial uses in the KDA. And lastly, the OPA supports the continued operation of Hillcrest Mall. However, should the mall be redeveloped, the OPA requires a transportation study that would demonstrate how the street network can accommodate new growth and connect to the adjacent neighborhoods. Next slide, please. And this brings us to the end of this presentation and our recommendation that the committee receive our presentation and refer comments to staff. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's great. I'm going to bring it back to committee. Councillor Silovich, you want to start it off, and then Councillor Shu and Bree.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Ms. Chu. That's wonderful information. The only thing that I don't have many things to say here because we're still moving through the whole process. The only thing that I will continue to state is I see this as a terrible pinch point for traffic. It already is, and I cannot imagine putting 10,000 or more people here that is going to in any way help move the traffic along. I do understand there's the future. We look towards the future of a GO station. We look towards the future of another subway stop, the final subway stop there. And that's great. But honestly, unless we have flying cars, by the time this all comes to fruition, people should just move in and, never leave, because quite honestly, that's the way I see it happening. It's just, I know that the region is involved as well, but I think this is something that this can't be the elephant in the room. We have to discuss this. And, the extent, the west-east road that's just above, just north of Spruce, that's not going to help us move any more traffic in any kind of pattern that would be acceptable. That's my biggest concern. I mean, these buildings are coming. We know that. And if not here, where? Absolutely, 100%. But we still have a grade. We have a road pattern that you cannot hurdle over. It is what it is. So this is a big concern for me in particular as one of the local councillors for this area, and I know that it has the attention of our regional councillors as well and the region. What I would like to know is, By the way, I love the Market Promenade. I think that's a fantastic idea. Thank you. It's a great way to connect east to west. And I've long maintained that we should have some kind of a path system like they have downtown in this particular intersection, this KDA. I believe, and I've discussed it with the development community as well, I believe it would be paramount to move the people along in this particular area, especially with the subway stop there in, 50 years' time. So the only thing I want to add is that through you, Mr. Chair, to Ms. Chu, if she can take this, or to our commissioner, how do we protect what our vision is, the municipality's vision, in this particular KDA? How do we protect that from what I always term, a development proposal putting an envelope on a stamp as opposed to the other way around, a stamp on an envelope, so it just blows the whole thing up. And we already have that. I mean, it's here. It's not, this is nothing in the future. So what mechanisms are in place for us as a municipality to protect our vision without everything that comes here going to the provincial board? And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but it's a huge concern.
Thank you, Councillor. With respect to protecting our vision, this center is envisioned to be a transit-supportive location. It is supposed to be a complete community with mix of uses. And I hear your concerns about overwhelming density. And one of the mechanisms that the city has to employ is the protected major transit station areas, because according to the Planning Act, municipalities do have the right to, or the authority to stipulate the minimum and maximum heights as well as density for PMTSAs.
That's true. However, we all know that that's appealable. So that's my concern. That can be appealable to the board. And if anybody wants to go above that, which it already has, it's that balance, right? And it's very, very concerning. But thank you. I appreciate your response. Commissioner, did you want to you, Mr. Chair?
Just to build on what staff have said, Councillor, whatever comfort you may want to derive from the fact that, staff continue to dialogue with these major landowners. And secondly, given the scale of their holdings, their proposals are long-term.
Yes.
So when you just talk about and raise a concern about parking and traffic, and, that's being very visionary into the future in terms of what that may look like in 10, 20, or 30 years from now, as to what the transportation network may look like, what our transportation options may be, and what the future of the automobile and public transportation may also be. So in terms of parking standards and road capacity and those types of things. So hopefully there'll be a merging of the various technologies, planning visions, and marketplace conditions to help ease those concerns in the long term. But it is an evolutionary process. And as I say, these landowners are here for the long term, and they simply do not have the capacity to build everything all at once. So they would be looking at phased development, and we would hopefully massage the plans going forward to achieve the city's vision in the long term and build complete communities in this location as well as others throughout the city.
I appreciate that, Commissioner. Thank you very much. I think that we all need to come back in 50 to 60 years' time in spirit and hover over the KDA and see just exactly what our plans in the past meant to the plans for the future. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Xu.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. Regarding to the slide number 10, the KDA's reliability for visitor and residents taking public transit is crucial. As the PMTSA mentioned before, is the alignment of a local and regional government policies that encourage people to utilize public transit, particularly with the planned Young North South extension. However, I believe a critical consideration is how to connect people who do not live along Yonge Street to the subway station and also to the transportation hub. So my question is, do we have any plan to promote people to use more public transit, working together with Metrolinx or any other public transportation agency to promote people to use more public transit to accommodate this plan as well? Because it's highly reliable on public transit. So do we have any plan like this?
Currently, I am not sure what Metrolinx's plans are. I know we are in talk with them, as we develop this official plan amendment with them. For the city, there's things that's outside of our purview, such as regional transportation planning, but we do have some control in terms of how we plan out the public realm. And I know for this KDA, we are trying to bring in finer grained blocks. So more streets, more bike paths, more laneway, more walking paths. That allows people to not just go on Yonge Street, but go on the local streets, the collector streets. It's supposed to be smaller blocks, so it's more comfortable to walk in. Those are the things that would help to encourage transit riders to go to these two stations when they come.
My second question is not easy, but it may fall outside our jurisdiction of a local government, but I try to raise it here. Do we have any potential plan to introduce a new form of public transit like shuttle buses or minibuses to facilitate access to a transportation hub from the residential area, not along Yonge Street? It's very important to get people connected to the transportation hub. And there's a KDA with a medium to high density area. So I think we have to do more study on this. Yeah, this is my comment.
Thank you.
Yeah. And can I ask one more question? Regarding to the approach to the job creation, as this project is a mixture of residential and commercial purpose, regarding to the job creation, are we going to promote live locally and work locally to relieve the pressure of the transportation at the same time?
Yes, that's a very good point. Our official plan update is premised on complete communities, which is allowing people to live, work, and play in the same area, in the same neighborhood. And so having a mix of uses is really important. And this is why we try to retain existing non-residential gross floor area as well as expand it. And so requiring retail, community uses, commercial uses, and encourage office uses. I don't know if Sibel wanted to add more.
Yeah, I mean, the official plan encourages and permits that mix of use, and it's through our development approvals where we work with the proponents to ensure that there is that mix of use. At the end of the day, though, whoever chooses to work or live in those communities, they may well live and work there, or they may have other options. And I think just in terms of the transportation questions, I think you're speaking to sort of that last mile. That is something that's being looked at through our transportation master plan. And also through these development applications, we often ask for a transportation demand management study. So that is another way of encouraging the people who ultimately end up in these buildings to use other forms of travel aside from their cars. And it's really, it's the combination of all of these initiatives that we're doing that leads people and supports their ability to have choice around how they get around and how we can support them.
Thanks so much. That's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chu, and Councillor Tree, you had your hand up on this also?
Okay, thank you so much. Through you, Ms. Chair, to our staff, I just have a question regarding to the FSI. That's 9 store on the page 7. 7 is 9. Yeah, 7 FS 9. If I change to the floor, how many floor is going to be? 70, 60?
We are still undertaking the final analysis of the FSI and how it translates into the number of stories. I don't believe that's available right now because we're still working through it, but it is an increase from the previous 2018 draft secondary plan because that plan had a maximum of 4 FSI. We are increasing it because, we are looking at the center overall in terms of the city structure. It is supposed to be the second most densest location in the city following the Richmond Hill Center. And it also, has these 2 transit systems that's coming into the KDA. Mm-hmm. There's a BRT line. So there's a lot of transit infrastructure already going to be invested in this area. So we do want to leverage it and capitalize on that. Furthermore, we did look at the development applications that's currently in the pipeline, as well as what is approved. Some of them went to the OLT, through appeals. And so we are looking at, what is happening on the ground and then thinking about what is appropriate for this area when we look at the city's overall infrastructure, when we look at the city structure and how it fits into the city structure.
Okay, so I just reviewed the Richmond Hill secondary plan. If I remember correctly, that FSI maximum is 6 point something or 5 point something. At that time is already 70 floor. So when I see the 7 FSI, if 6 can reach to 70, 7, I don't just assuming, right? I don't have details yet, but based on the previous plan in just source of our this plan areas is around the 70 floor. If we build up 7, it might be bumped up 80 or 90. I don't know. So it's a pretty scary numbers here. I just throw the question to you. Okay, thank you. I don't need answer. Thanks.
Do you want to address that comment?
I want to reassure you, it's not going to be 70 stories for
Yeah.
the KDA. But it is less than the Richmond Hill Center. It's the second densest location.
Yeah, we're forced to have that height at Yonge and 7, but my understanding is the highest point will be on the corner of Yonge and 16th itself, where we've got, maybe 38 to 40 would be the highest, and then down from there. I don't see anyone else that wants to speak, but Regional Councillor Chan, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Actually, before I comment and ask a question, the chair's comment actually reminds me in my days as the Ward 6 councillor, there was that particular case now in front of OLT, whereby it's 43 story and 38 story. So that kind of sets out the context of where we are now. And that get to my comments, and both the local councillors, Ward 5 and Ward 6, already raised the comments. And in the past, I did share my comments with planning staff on a lot of things. So I'm very brief in here. 2 things is one I particularly like and seeing is that I believe is a new requirement. Perhaps it would help to put up that slide that show that I think on the lower bottom, at least about 3 new requirements that I want to touch on. I can't remember the number, but there is at least one that shows one is about something at grade, public space or retail, and also talking about maintaining the minimum of the non-residential. If it can be pulled up, that would be helpful. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I really, it's a comment, and I have been really saying to people who come to propose development in that area to have, I like that word, active frontage on the streets, well, as well as on some kind of public art at the corner of Yonge and 16. And it's not like any other intersection. That should be a place whereby it has some kind of public space, public category, good memory of that intersection. So I'm glad to see that. And good to also see that the particular one is also requiring non-residential use to front onto parks. I think that would also help to kind of direct or distribute the traffic in terms, I'm not talking about vehicle traffic, but pedestrian, that we're really to more utilizing the public spaces at the intersection, the active frontage, and also towards the parks, which is on the other side is Spruce, on the east side is that the future one, I believe is called Duncan as we see it. So I just want to comment, those are good features I like to see, and it's going to be there as approach. The other one is I want to comment is on, to the extent your staff can answer question, and it's always been talked about, I think even in the parks plan, is to have that trail along the CN rail. And I honestly hope that we maintain, in particular with the future subway corridor is going along that track, which is currently under CN jurisdiction, Metro Links. That would be something we want to really try to work it in terms of future, I guess, discussions, review with proposed development, particularly on the east side of Yonge Street. Perhaps the question would be to staff, to that end, would that be any kind of consideration of working together or making proposal to the jurisdiction I just mentioned about Metro Links and CN on that prospect, about some kind of either joint or at least if they're concurrent, that would be into a really more active, perhaps even multi-use trail. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That's a very good point, Councillor Chan, and certainly has been an objective of council in the past as we move forward with our ongoing discussions with Metrolinx and the province about the future extension of the subway system and storage areas. We continue to reinforce this objective of the multi-use trail. And it comes back to a comment that Councillor Hsu had made earlier about providing opportunities for integration and having pedestrian access to and from Yonge Street and the various points of access onto the rapid transit system. So yes, it is part of our ongoing discussions, Councillor Chair.
Thank you for the response, Commissioner. And don't forget, the city will be building also a new overpass linking Yonge Street through Observatory Lane to the David Dunlop Observatory Park. So all these can be think of comprehensively in a kind of like a road for active users, meaning in this case pedestrians or even cyclists. So really linking the not just trail along the CN track or future subway, but also can be in a way get onto the DDO National Historic Site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chan. Okay. So I just want to make a couple comments. I don't necessarily have any questions. I just this is such an important intersection, and this KDA it's dwarfed by the Richmond Hill Center, and so because it's so close, it's not. But treated on its own, just within this delineated boundary, we've got the density and the number of people and jobs and things going on comparable to downtown Kingston or London, and this is what is going to be there, and what it's it's planned for a different future where people work from home. They want to live in a place where they're also going to be working that has every possible retail amenity in 5 minutes walking distance, with great access through public transit to go elsewhere. But it's designed with the intent that a next generation would take an Uber once or twice a week rather than own a vehicle and pay for the cost of insurance and maintenance and all the rest. And that this is a new affordable option. It's certainly not what conspiracy theorists are proposing, that this is some means of controlling the population. It's just providing an excellent opportunity to live and have everything within a 15-minute walk that you would need, and to live a life that doesn't include a car. And when those massive parking lots are transferred to above and below ground parking, I think this area is going to function really well. If you look at any downtown area, they just don't have the same demand for vehicles, and anyone's driving in and out, it'll be like taxis or Ubers or service vehicles, and I think we were well planned for that. This is really exciting. What's happening at Yonge and 16th, and I know it comes as a result of consultation with those two primary and major stakeholders, and this is not just pie in the sky, something Richmond Hill wants to see. This is based on real plans for those landowners that they're really coming forward and to offer this environment or this community where they're going to have purpose-built rentals, which is so needed across the region and so needed in Richmond Hill. Purpose-built rentals that are a more affordable way of achieving shelter. And when you're in a purpose-built rental, you retain ownership of the building, and you're collecting rents from those people, but you also they're also the customers of retail shops that are also owned and operated by the same person. So they want to give a great life experience to the people living there, but they also want to give a great customer experience. So the integration of the retail and the residential here, it's very exciting, very forward thinking. I want to commend our staff for understanding and seeing and having the vision of what ultimately will play out at this intersection. And I hate that it kind of gets overshadowed by what's happening at Richmond Hill Center, because any other city or town in Ontario had a KDA as exciting as Yonge and 16th. It would be that they're such a huge focus and such a the means for generating excitement. But we've got two of them in the same city here. So I never want to downplay how fabulous what's happening and what's being planned at Yonge and 16th is. So on that note, we got a motion to receive the comments and refer them back to staff. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. And we have one final presenter who's going to give us a wrap up and the next steps and recommendations for going forward in our engagement. It's Civil Von Kersel. Yeah, it's just a 5-minute presentation this time. Go ahead.
I will keep it
Wrong
quick because
person.
I know I'm between you and dinner. So if we could just go to the next slide, please. This is the timeline that we have, or milestones we've identified for the adoption of these 4 OPAs. So I've mentioned it before, the OPAs will become public on May 11th through our OP Update website. We'll send you an email to remind you that they are now available for your review. We will be open to having any kind of stakeholder consultation if people want to come and have a one-on-one meeting with staff to better understand the amendments. We are open to that. We will have the open house. It will be a in-person open house at the McConaughey Center. So we're really quite excited. This is the first time we get to actually have an in-person, and it truly will be an open house where people will just walk in and look at information with respect to the 4 OPAs. And we are doing this jointly with our zoning bylaw team. So there will also be a station there that speaks about zoning for centers and corridors in general. So trying to minimize that consultation fatigue, if you will. We then have our council public meeting, which is scheduled for June 20th. That's an opportunity for the public to come and provide their comments in terms of the OPAs. And then over the summer, we will take in all of the comments that we've received, do some further fine tuning of the OPAs and bring them back to committee of the whole and then council for adoption. If we could go to the next slide, please. So what we have outlined here is very similar to what I just mentioned, but I just wanted to kind of reflect on there are certain, there's some streams of work that we need to do that are statutory, and there's others that are in addition to the statutory work. So like I said, the public open house is a joint event with the zoning team, but the open house itself is a statutory event. And I also just want to note that we will seek a meeting with the BIA, the village BIA, to talk to them about this OPA. And again, we are open for stakeholder conversations on request, whether it's by ratepayer groups, landowners, or other interested parties. And like I said, we'll bring the OPAs to council in the fall for adoption. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. So yes.
Okay, very much. You sure there's no more
Also,
presentations?
Next step, it was the same information. So yeah, sorry about that.
Okay.
By memory, yeah.
Well, I think we're good. That was enough presentations for one day. So I'll bring it back to committee one last time. Councillor Tree, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through Mr. Chair to our staff, can you please bring the slide to the page 2? Just regarding to the in-person public open house. If I look at time, this is only June 7 to 9 p.m., only 2 hours. From my personal experience, because someone has in their family staff or others, they may not join. So this is not really enough. 2 hours for the entire city, designed for entire city's development, and only have 2 hours of public involvement. This is really less. My concerns here is, can you please either extend the time or add another slide to permit people to join them in the different timeline? Content may be same, but we want more accessibilities from different community. Can you please add another slide timeline here? Another question is here. Before your slide here, I want a bigger public communications. I want all the people either send newsletters or send some others, news or radios, whatever, to let residents know. I think you have another slide here, public communication. From city perspective, hopefully we can reach everybody because it's really city design for next 5, 10, 20 years. I want majority of people know what's happening in our city. Don't tell us later on, right? We have a plan approved for build up 7 or 10 floors along the maybe Oak Ridge Center or along the BI Center for 15 stores. Don't give them a surprise, give them now. If they have questions, bring this question to us for discussion. Instead, some new applications result, I need a 15. It's fit for our requirement. A lot of people shocked in the neighbors. We don't want to see that. Better ways. Add another slide here, public communication. Thank you. That's my 2 suggestions.
Maybe I could just respond. In terms of the public open house, following the open house, we will make all of the presentation material available to the public. And we have an OP update email address where people can write in and ask questions. We'll also have a submission form. So if they have particular comments that they want to make about any of the OPAs, they'll be able to use that submission form throughout the June and into the summer. And then in terms of how we're giving notice about the public open house, we are using a very multi-pronged process that we've been using for other events. So we have email notices to anyone who's on our notification list, anyone who's subscribed to our OP Update webpage. It will be advertised twice in the Liberal. There will be digital advertising. There'll be those Kerbeck signs in 3 locations across the city. And we'll be using social media. So there's lots of ways in which we're trying to get the message across to this, to everyone in the city about this event. And like I said, if they aren't able to make it on the 7th, they will have all of the same information available to them, and they can always reach out to staff to ask questions.
And okay, Councillor, if I could just add, this is a minimum schedule that we're going to have a public, but there'll be countless other opportunities for engagement, and rather than presume more time is needed, based on the people that come out, if there's an outcry for more meeting or more time, or we're run short, we'll continue to host and hold other meetings to accommodate.
My concern is because the public thing is June 7th, and our council public meeting here in the Peru is 20. We only have around 2 weeks left over. The gap is really tight.
Yeah, sure.
But
It's not the decision. Yeah.
But our council public meeting, again, it's a council public meeting, no decisions. We're going into the fall before we, so there's lots of opportunities for people to make their concerns known. And we have a great strategy of getting out the information as to what's being proposed. And okay, Mayor West, do you want to move the motion?
Yeah, I read your mind. I think you need the motion moved. I just very quickly want to thank staff. That was like what you saw here today was a lot of work presenting that, and I'm sure a lot of work preparing for the presentations, but the amount of work that's gone in behind the scenes is huge, I'm sure. And I thank everybody for doing that. We have a lot more work to do, but I appreciate the work that's been done up to this point. Thank you.
Maybe if I could just add, it's not just this team. There is a whole group of other people that are a part of our core team and our steering committee, subject matter experts that are involved. So, just want to acknowledge their hard work in preparing this material as well.
That's a good point. Yeah. No, I meant that when I went like this with my finger. So thanks.
Wand.
Yeah.
Okay, and Councillor Thompson?
Yes, thank you very much. And I definitely would like to echo the words of the mayor there. And I would also imagine that as council members, we will also get the PSAs that we can send out through our social media as well, right?
Yes.
Absolutely. Anyway, thank you. Great job.
Yes, my communications folks would probably tell me to ask you to, now I forgot what the term is. Retweet, yes, retweet. Thank you, so that the message gets across.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, please do so. Thank you.
Thank you through the chair.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone that presented today. And we're not going to establish the date of the next meeting. That'll come later. So a motion to adjourn, Mayor West. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay. Thanks.